2 episodes ago, our listeners gave us a great new theme, and we love it. But this episode, we just couldn't resist the opportunity to put one in for the Browncoats.
Take my love, take my land, take me where I cannot stand. I don't care, I'm still free. You can't take the sky from me. Take me out to the black, tell them I ain't coming back. Burn the land and boil the sea. You can't take the sky from me.
This is episode 18 of the D6 Generation, the Serenity Edition.
There's no place I can be since I found serenity. But you can't take the sky from me.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming at you with the speed of a Firefly-class mid-bulk transport on full burn. Tonight's edition is brought to you by Juan, who says, "Wrong! Clearly the sixth sheep is sick, has more dramatic tension and a more clearly defined character arc than either rubber baby buggy bumpers or she sells seashells down by the seashore." I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today, as always, our regular panelists are Russ, I aim to misbehave, Wakeland, and Rafe, too pretty to die, Granger. As a special guest today, we include Jamie the Big Damn Hero Chambers, author of the Serenity role-playing game and vice president of the Margaret Weis Productions. Let's begin. Joseph Hill Whedon was born in 1964 in New York City and would one day dominate the attention of a generation of sci-fi fans with his works including Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, and of course the beloved Firefly. Although every one of these series were not finished to his satisfaction, the obviously painfully short run of Firefly, killed by Fox executives against all common programming wisdom, arguably made the most lasting impression, spawning an entire online community and a major motion picture. Joss Whedon's work is known for its quirky yet poignant characters, its convoluted and literate writing style, and for breaking archetypes and preconceptions throughout their story arcs. Question: what would be the best archetype or preconception to break, and how would you do it? Rafe, the white hat is for the fat cats.
Doing a Dr. Horrible sing-along blog.
Russ, nerd's the word that spurs the herd.
Dressed in black means good guy.
Jamie, tall and dark, veers from the mark.
A pirate duck.
Wrong! Obviously, you've all forgotten the whore with a golden heart. How funny would it be to watch an entire show where one main character strives to help a lost, desperate waif of a prostitute, and then she takes off with all of his cash? Priceless! Issue number 2. For centuries, tongue twisters have been used to teach children how to employ good diction as they are growing up. In theater and film, tongue twisters are often used to hone one's abilities to speak quickly but clearly when the adrenaline is running fast and high. In fact, most theater classes from high school to graduate school employ these time-honored phrases and ad nauseum to force their students to become masters of their own tongues. Question: what is the best-known tongue twister? Ross, the quick-witted cricket critic.
I don't know, them two twisted.
Rafe, Shayna leads, but Sheila needs.
I don't know, but it's the one where Peter stands up for Cindy in the brain.
Jamie, 11 benevolent elephants.
Pink perilous panties.
Nice.
He beats his fists against the posts and still insists he sees the ghosts. Have you people seriously never attended a single graduate articulation seminar? Issue number 3. We all have our favorite television shows that didn't quite make it far enough. As sci-fi and fantasy fans, we have more than our average. Whether you're talking shows that died the death they deserved, like the newest iteration of The Bionic Woman, to a slew of shows that deserved a third or fourth look, they all leave holes in our souls. We all remember classics that died before their time, like The Tick, Arrested Development, Sliders, Sequest DSV, and of course Firefly. Question: what is the ultimate cost to a company for canceling what could be a universe-changing series? Russ, the number crunch is worth a punch.
Sliders did not die before its time.
Jamie, they say fad, I say they're mad.
Huh?
Rafe, they say it blue, I say it's Sue.
Yeah, I don't remember it either, but I think it was called Justice Project.
Obviously, they go to a very special level of hell, a level they reserve for child molesters and people who talk in the theater. Issue number 4. Most children, as they are growing up, play make-believe of one form or another. Whether they're playing the now politically incorrect cowboys and Indians, cops and robbers, or army men, they're pretending to be people or things that they are not in real life. As we get older, most people put these mind games behind them, feeling that it is sufficient to live their fantasy lives in their own brains and not bring it out into the light of day. However, some people greatly enjoy pretending to be other people, living in other times or places, facing other challenges and foes. Question: if you were a role-playing character from a game called Desktop and Daily Grinds, what would you be? Rafe, I'm a lawyer, not a boy, you freaky Tom Sawyer.
I keep telling my wife I want to wear the heels.
Jamie, I'm a writer and a fighter, and my future's bright and brighter.
I like playing doctor.
Russ, I'll put down the pewter shooter if you give me a computer.
I'm just going to go with software engineer. I can't follow those up.
Wrong! You didn't listen. Rafe, you would be the recycling bin. Jamie, you would be the big blue W. And Russ, you'd be the Kona blend. That is it for now. Thank you for listening, and good night. An even playing field. A clear set of rules. And a good roll of the dice.
Dice are our vice. We are the D6 generation.
Hi, and welcome to episode 18 of the D6 generation.
You know what that means?
What does that mean?
That means we're legal.
Very funny. I'm
That's
Russ
what she
Wakeland.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Rafe, coming at you with high definition Granger.
Alrighty then.
You're confusing your fans, by the way. They don't want to call you anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
They
You
know.
know,
They're wandering lost and alone in the
Here's
dark.
a tip. We call him Random Rafe because of you never know what he's going to do. So now they're starting to choose random nicknames. Just go to random. It's just easier. Everybody just
Which is a very cool
Go right to random.
character.
Random
Yeah.
Rafe.
Random.
Ooh, that's a
Random.
good point.
Random access.
What?
So-
Random? What was that? Is that David Eddings?
So what's going to be in today's episode?
Well, in today's episode, we're going to cover the thank yous for our advertisers.
No, in today's episode, we're going to the black.
Oh, we are going.
We are going to the black.
Sorry, we are going to the black, and you and
You're not going to sing it.
No.
No, you're not. We're going to be talking about Serenity quite a bit.
Serenity
Who-
and Firefly
and who we interviewing?
Brown Coats.
Who are we interviewing today?
We are interviewing Jamie Chambers, okay, who wrote the Serenity role-playing game, vice president over at Margaret Weis Productions, one of the, as we will learn, driving creative forces behind their entire Cortex system,
Right.
and works closely with fantasy author luminary Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman.
Right.
Very fascinating stuff.
That's great stuff. And, of course, the Serenity role-playing game, which is just
This
good
is
fun.
it. This is the big role-playing bonanza.
Right, and it's good because we haven't done a role-playing episode in a while. We did.
No.
Right.
We talked about, the 40K one.
Yep.
And we talked about Battlestar.
Yep.
I mean, not Battlestar, D&D 4.
Right, yep.
And now we're going to talk about Serenity.
Yeah, and we're actually going to respond to some questions because there's an awful lot of board gamers and war gamers out there who hear the term role-playing and kind of make a sneery-looking face like they smelled something funny and stop
Right.
listening.
So we got to tell people what role-playing is all about.
Yeah.
But first, we have some other things to take care of. We have
okay.
our
now
thank
we're going to
yous.
say thank you.
Right. So first to our advertisers, which this week is paintedfigs.com.
Painted Figs, and you're going to be thanking them, too.
They have a big new contest. More about that in a
Big
minute.
new contest.
I also want to thank our donations.
Thank you, Marky D.
Mark D. from Bowling Green, Ohio.
Ohio.
Craig, can you give us a bowling sound? I mean, Rafe, can you give us a bowling sound effect?
Sure.
What?
Or I was going with...
Yeah. Maybe
That's much better.
Maybe Rafe threw a lawn bowling. I don't know what was going on.
I think he threw a person down.
I think he did
I think
too.
that was a gutter ball, and there was an old man in the gutter.
One of those balloons.
Okay.
in there.
That's right.
And we got to thank our sponsors. Now, our sponsors, of course, are folks who go out
Folks
and they
like you.
and they bid on a shout out for our different segments.
Yeah, I'd like to particularly thank Juan. Thank you,
And
Juan.
Juan had the shout out for in front of Rapid Fire, which
Yeah.
got Craig's
The sixth
tongue,
sheik's sick sheep.
tongue twisted.
Damn it.
But our sponsors, of course, in always, so for the past, since the Wives Attack episode has been added as a
That's
shout
right.
out option.
They have won.
They have
every
made the most money
episode.
every episode. Until now.
Ah.
At the end of the auctions, technically the wives had won with $15. However, Adam won his auction for $10.
You want to watch yourself?
But sent us.
Your wife is over
but
my shoulder.
He sent us $16. So
Nice.
Adam, so he actually paid the most for any shout out. I think Adam.
Nicole, would you like to make a comment?
comment right in the middle of your segment. And Adam, you will hear from Karen and I later when we record our segment. But you, my friend, are a cheater. Okay.
No. I think Adam used a metagame.
I think
Yeah, he used an
Adam
interesting
asked for Karen's
mechanic.
little thing. It doesn't count.
Oh, that was an innovative mechanic, Adam. We liked it. Well
Yes.
played, sir.
Here's to you, Adam.
That's right. Well
That's
played.
right.
All right. So
Wait,
Thank you, Adam.
Wait, you know what I
wait,
like
she's
about-
leaving the room. Wait. Thank you, Adam. We really think you're a cool guy.
Right.
You know what I like the best about the wives winning the most money?
What's that?
We get to keep it.
Don't tell him that.
That's our dirty little secret.
That's going to be the next
know.
problem. All right.
It's awesome.
So now also we want to thank.
We don't see it either, but they'll want it. They'll want to see it, touch
and
it, count
we also
it.
want to mention another supporter of the D6 generation, Myriad
We do.
Games.
Yes.
Myriad
Big
Games.
fans of Dan over at Myriad Games.
Yep. The D6 generation is kindly supported by Myriad Games on behalf of friendly local game stores everywhere. Visit Myriad Games in Salem, New Hampshire, or online at myriadgames.com. And remember, support your friendly professional gaming store.
And we're talking professional gaming. Store.
Yes, and Dan runs a
You
very
know what I
professional
love the most about Dan?
What's that?
Is I feel like I have
Don't
my
say
own.
his rugged handsomeness or I'm leaving.
Well, other than that, I feel like I have my own personal stockbroker. Like I call him up. I'm like, Dan, I need, I need Anna Meeples. He's like, I got it covered, man. It's already on its way for
Really?
you. I'm like, yes.
Now, what happened when you called and said, "Sell Agricola, sell"?
I know. Every time I do call or email Dan, I think maybe I really should have a stockbroker to retire with no money.
There you go. But the key with Dan is nice, clean, professional store, and he's done a lot to promote local stores in the
does a great
same
art.
vein.
Yep.
I mean, he's
Yep.
a big believer in sort of like that guy who made the tables.
So support the Dan near you.
Exactly. Those elevated stores that make it you're not ashamed to walk in there with your significant other.
Right.
No, but seriously, on that, what's important to me about that is that's what's worth the money than the internet. You don't get that on the internet.
you
You
don't.
don't get someone who's like, hey, I thought you might like this. I put it aside for you.
Right.
Right. Well, they could, but you'd be like, "Who the hell are you?"
And our last set of thank yous, we haven't we haven't thanked our iTunes guys for a couple episodes. So
That's right.
iTunes reviews really help us out because
I gotta go.
They promote our show and even Hollywood, because no one would listen to the Hollywood Minute without the help of the iTunes listeners.
That's right.
So we need to
Not
thank.
true.
You want to help thank our U.S.
No,
people there,
I'm
Craig?
not saying that. You say that.
All right, I'll say the Big Juice Pump, Big City Juice Pump.
Jesus,
Pimp.
Big City Juice Pimp. My God,
Got you to say it.
your reading abilities are phenomenal.
And he thinks these guys are great. We got this one's left by a guy called Great Show, who says we have contagious enthusiasm.
And he's not
And-
talking about you with your constant colds either.
Other folks, OBR and Mini Bull Chris and Agrist13. We had Anonymous, who thought we were awesome.
Thank you,
and
Anonymous.
Isn't that
JMPM.
guy the author of a bunch of really
He
good
totally
poems?
is.
He's
No,
a
I would
very
say
good poet.
bad poems.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
Generally
bad.
speaking, yeah.
The
No
good ones-
offense, Anonymous.
No one
but-
claims. Yeah, JMPM and Wogcast.
Podcast. I'll take the UK. Big fan of the UK.
To the UK.
I will be over in the UK in less than a month and a half.
Very exciting.
Fa loves the show, but not Russ's sniffles. Again, Russ's sniffles.
Yeah.
Craig Withers, very kind, and I love your name.
You gonna pronounce that properly for
Craig.
Welsh? Yeah, there you go.
And Ray, if you want to take the Aussies,
You sure do, man. Lord. I'm not swearing or anything. That's the guy's
No,
name.
I know.
He's fantastic
no,
about
I
all
think
things.
he means we
game-
are, but I'm sure he is too.
He's-
Lord is fantastic about all things gaming. Also,
And Martifus.
Marta.
Hey, hey Martifus, how you doing? I ran into him, Russ, on Grimnair.
Nice. All right, he's
Yes,
playing in war.
said
Excellent.
hi, and yeah.
See,
Is
see,
that-
and if we hadn't read the iTunes reviews today, you would know that.
all right.
That's very true. Thanks,
And-
Martifus.
What does he mean by we're very regular? Does he mean
He means that
eat a
we
lot
eat our
of
brand.
brain?
I believe he thinks, in addition to that, we eat our brand. I guess
Mucinex?
that is kind of a personal observation. to
I
be honest
don't
with
know.
you. I think that he means that
I mean,
our show is
I
timely.
don't know. I don't even know about you two. I can tell you that I'm very regular.
Excellent. And now we have our. Now, today is the big finale, or not today, but this past Monday was the
Yeah.
big finale
Dun, 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 dun,
of
dun.
the Monster Apocalypse picture caption contest. Now, we had fully planned to announce the winner right here, right now, but the problem is that we had so many amazing entries. We got to. Are you finished?
I don't know. Let me check. I think that was it.
All right, it's going to be a long show, people.
Longer than that would be just ludicrous.
I apologize. We're going to have to cull through the. We want to make sure everybody gets a fair shot.
We got
overwhelmed.
We got roughly one big, huge, giant monster's weight worth of.
So we got to
stuff.
listen to all these babies, put together a nice little track of the best to play for you next episode, and we'll announce the winner and send out the prizes. But we do want to make sure everybody gets a fair shake. So the contest is over.
Yep.
We're going to announce the winner next episode. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you all that entered, and I mean all of you.
And now we have a new contest to announce.
We do. You go for it.
Okay. Well, PaintedFigs.com has put up another excellent prize.
Amazing prize.
And this is going to be our easiest contest to enter so far.
Ever.
What's going to happen is we're going to post the rules to the contest on our website. The rules are very simple. You're going to send essentially an email to PaintedFigs.com. Okay? And they're going to tell you what to put in the email. And they're going to tell you the rules, because basically you're going to put yourself on their mailing list, basically. But the good news is, if you enter this contest, you will have a chance to win. What are they going to win?
This prize is amazing. I want to try it. Unfortunately,
contractually,
I am obligated not to. The prize is all of the Marine models from the Assault on Blackreach box painted to your specifications as to chapter colors.
Right. How cool is that?
I mean, right there.
Craig.
Yes.
Explain to us what's in the Black Reach box.
Thank you. I was wondering if you were going to ask that, Rafe. With the Black Reach box, you will get a Space Marine captain with a power sword, and I think it's a Stormbolter, but I'm not sure. 10-man tactical squad with the flamer and
now with
missile launcher.
combat squad capability.
Now with combat squad capability. Split that flamer off from that missile launcher. Don't lose any shots. And the Terminators, 5 Terminators.
No way.
Yep, 5 Terminators and a Dreadnought with the only plastic multi-melt arm that you can get.
Wow.
All that painted, folks.
All of that painted to your chapter specifications.
And all you got to do is go over to paintedfigs. We'll go to our website first. Go to d6generation.com. Read the contest rules. Understand that deal. Send an email to them, and you're in.
Yep.
And then you just sit back and wait.
Absolutely.
So we're very thankful.
Wait. It's going to be a random draw?
Yeah, random draw. Very easy. Okay. So you don't have to think. It just happens.
I like it.
I know. It's very cool. So thanks very much to the Painted
I might enter under a pseudonym.
You cannot enter. Members of this podcast and their families may not win.
And then I'm going to put it on eBay and sell it.
I'm going to get one of my. I'm going to get. Ooh, that's mean. I'm going to get one of my students to enter.
All right. And now it's time for Achievements in Gaming. And Hollywood, whose achievements in gaming brought to us by this week?
Brought to you by Adam. Assembled 500 points of Grix and started painting jacks. Built a drop pod and started painting Space Marines again for use with the new Codex.
I just figured out what
Picked
it's
up
doing.
some Monster Apocalypse and played a few games. Winning a D6G shout-out auction on eBay, $16. Fake participation in achievements in gaming, priceless.
Nice. Extra
Very
achievement.
nice.
We'll give you 3 for that there.
Excellent.
Well done. And Adam, you get bonus points for being a happy gamer who plays both War Machine and
That's
40K.
Right. There you go.
Yeah,
Well
and
done,
Monster
sir.
Poc.
And MPOC.
And Empok.
Which is, getting kind of hard to find.
It is. It's
Yeah.
a little
The
thin on the
game
ground.
castle is sold out. They had a
The
mountain of that
starter
stuff.
boxes are gone
Yeah,
everywhere.
That game
I
is
think.
doing very well. Kudos to
You
Privateer.
know where
They
you
got a
should
winner.
go to check for that?
Where?
Myriad might still have some.
MyriadGames.com.
Yeah, I think. Well, the game castle's totally sold out, which is the store we play at, and Myriad is if you're in New Hampshire, check Myriad. I think they still had a few on the shelf last time I was there.
Dan's paid me on the side. I'm going to say.
Over and over and over again.
You've got a man crush on Dan.
Dan.
You do.
Dan.
No, Dan isn't. It's all from the heart.
Okay, so this week in achievements in gaming, what kind of games do we get going on here?
I'm going to say if you look at that list, it was really a touch of evil couple of weeks.
We did get some Touch of Evil in, which is the game we just gave away.
Yes,
as a matter of fact.
Yep, indeed. And I think you came around. I think you enjoyed your game.
I did. The first game I played, we had too many players, and we tried
weren't
some
really following the
wrong
rules.
interpretation of the rules. Mostly, anyway, it went poorly. So I did try again, though.
Yep.
Small game. Rafe, how many people played in our game? Was it 3 or 4?
4.
4, and had a great time.
Me, you, Josh, and Lance.
So we definitely want to review that game in the future.
Absolutely.
But it's fun.
I played.
It's fun, yeah.
You guys played. And then I came later and I played with 4 other of the local gang, including Ian, who loved it, and Joel, who bought it.
Nice.
And
Selling
Dave,
a game in the
there
store
you
there.
go.
Nicely done.
And Dave and Josh, who won.
No, he's like that.
He's a crafty little guy.
He is. You
Josh.
got to watch him.
He's crazy. This kid. Y'all know a kid like this and don't deny it. They play a game. In the first 45 minutes, they've got this really intense look on their face. There's a little crease between their eyebrows. And then all of a sudden, everything they do, from getting up to get a soda to moving a piece 1/2 an inch so that it's a little more evenly distributed on its space, is geared specifically to crush every other person at the table. I mean,
Achievement for Josh for crushing Craig.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I played with Karen.
How'd you like it?
She loved it. Well, she liked it. I think she loved it. I'm not
Let's
sure.
let her cover that.
Yeah,
the wives
she can
attack.
love it.
Karen, why don't you let us know how that you liked it?
We
wives
we
attack.
played co-op, which was nice. It was a nice 2-player co-op game. So it was us against the. I think we went against the werewolf.
So you know what I think I learned when I was
What's that?
playing co-op with Touch of Evil?
What's that?
And you know what else? I had trouble with Arkham Horror too, which is a co-op. I don't think I like co-op games where there's no human against me. I don't think I care for those that much.
Okay.
I think I need at least the potential that there's one human, like Shadows or Battlestar.
Yep.
I need that one human in the
I'll
game.
tell you that the times that I've played Touch of Evil with a large group and it was co-op, I didn't have as much fun.
Yeah.
I much prefer the.
Well, it's just something about it. But every man for himself in Touch of Evil is really fun.
Right. And then we had game day at Chez Fleuret.
Yes.
These don't count.
What's that?
These don't count.
No,
Well,
seriously,
how
dude.
does this
Dude, this only not
just
counts.
because you couldn't go doesn't mean they don't count.
Our friend Chris Flores, every so often, like once every 6 months, has this games day at his house, and it's literally from his wife makes more food than 30 men could consume.
Now, Karen
Seriously,
would
That's the
not.
part I like the best.
Karen would not forgive me if I didn't step in and say this was based on the 35th birthday surprise that she threw me.
no, that's true.
Yeah.
But you did that once.
I did
Chris
that
has done it
once.
like twice a year now.
I
since.
try to do it.
But he did start it, Chris. After you did it, Chris has every birthday and whatever else Chris can jam it in there. But it has
the cooking and the thing and all that
Well,
stuff.
yes,
It's-
and
you
Nikki's
need it-
very good at that.
Yeah, as is Karen.
as is Karen. Yeah, gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Karen knows where I live too. but
And you're going to be at her mercy in 2 days.
I
so.
am. I'm gonna be. Yeah. So anyway, but Chris runs this thing, and I was there from like 10:30 in the morning till late.
Yeah.
Like
I don't have the stamina to keep up with you guys. That's my problem.
well, you can come and go, but most of us hardcore guys are there.
You
We
can't.
played.
You come and go. You play one game.
I got to give some achievements out here to people here because let's just go through this here. We had
All right, go.
well, Alex, who's become a regular listener to the show and loves the show,
absolutely
was like quoting us like all night, all day long. So
Every 5 seconds during Battlestar Galactica, I think you just made a Geekly McNerdigan voice.
Right. So Alex, here's some achievements for you, buddy, because you said you wanted to earn a few achievements.
There
There
you
you
go.
go. Josh was there, Chris was there, Vince was there, Dave was there, and Chad was there. Every achievement.
Josh, who also listens.
Yes. So what do we play, Craig?
Well, I got there late because I had to do a bunch of lawn work and then set up the big graveyard and all the Halloween stuff in the front yard.
Achievements for Halloween.
Okay, so I started with a game of Battlestar Galactica, which Cylons won again, which is unfortunate. But it was by far the funniest game I've ever played because our friend Chad, who was a human, I, as a Cylon, engineered to get him thrown in the brig. And he wasn't mad at me. He was mad at all the other humans that didn't believe him to the point where he just started stocking up on skill cards and refused to use them until everybody else got him out. So they would be like, you got to try to get out. And he's like, I'm not going to try to get out. You either get me out or I'm just not playing anymore. So they're like, but that means we're playing with one player down. And he was like, absolutely. I just want to be the president. If you don't get me out and make me the president, I'm just not playing. And it almost came to blows.
Well, it's funny because we didn't all, because there were so many people at the party, we had broken up into 2 different groups. So I'm in one room playing Tomb.
Yeah.
We played Tomb. Now, normally Battlestar is a pretty quick game.
Right.
But we played.
It's random though,
It
because
is. Depends.
it's the how many jump icons you get and how far you go per jump.
Also, it's driven. The Battlestar is definitely driven by how badly the humans want to win, i.e.,
That's
jump.
true, yeah.
If the humans look around and go, "Oh, look, there's no silence, just hang out here," the game go on forever. I mean, it just literally could because they have to jump to make the game end. So we're in the other room playing Tomb. We played 2 games of Tomb at the time. The one played Battlestar.
Yeah.
While we're playing the first game of Tomb, they're laughing in there. They're having a great
yeah.
time. And we're all like, boy, maybe we should have pushed harder to get in that Battlestar. I mean, it's like having a blast. And by the time we're in the second game of Tomb,
God, it was
it's
ugly.
like you could just, the tension was like leaking out.
The F-bombs.
And we're like, we definitely chose the correct game.
You would have thought he really got thrown in the brig.
It was funny. It was really funny. So Chad, sorry, buddy, but you definitely.
I love it when Chad's like that. It's hilarious.
It's funny. Well, Chad and Chris in the same game are always fun to watch.
Oh,
well,
yes.
Chad and Chris go back a long way. They're
Yes,
like
they do.
brothers, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and so it's just great the way Chad interacts with Chris.
So
and Chris interacts
there was
with Chad.
Battlestar, there was Tomb played. What else happened there, Craig?
I played a big game of Touch of Evil, which was a lot of fun again. I won. Actually, I had a good day. I won as a Cylon in Battlestar Galactica, and then
Thanks to Chad.
Thanks to Chad, absolutely. The Cylons would never have won if Chad hadn't decided to boycott the human side. I won Touch of Evil because the friggin' Scarecrow became bionic. I mean, it was ridiculously powerful. And Chris, who's an excellent player of any game, slightly underestimated how powerful the Scarecrow was. Went in to kill it, just missed killing it before he got knocked unconscious. So I stepped in and killed the Scarecrow.
Right.
Yay.
What did Chris think of the game?
I think he liked it a lot. I think I think everybody who played Battlestar, Touch of Evil, and Cutthroat Caverns, almost all those guys who were playing it for the first time were planning on buying the games when we finished.
And as a testament to another new game we tried, we played Tomb, and there's literally when this game thing happens. By the way, everybody basically brings all their games,
Yep.
so there is a mountain, of
Yep.
games to be chosen from. And we broke out Tomb. I played it once, and immediately when it was over, it was like, we got to play again.
Yep.
So Tomb again was a big. Everybody that played Tomb really enjoyed it too.
Yep.
I heard Race for the Galaxy was a big hit too.
Race for the
That was
Galaxy.
early days.
What was
I
great
wasn't
was
there.
what
You
was
really
great.
need.
Race is a good, what they call in the board game circles, filler game. And what that means is when you're having a big gaming party, which I know when you have a lot of your friends over and you're going to be gaming all day, you are in the situations where you're waiting to start the next big, 3-hour battle, but you're waiting for that guy who said he's going to show up at 2 and it's like 1:15. What do you do? Well, that's when you break out these small, quick games, and Race for the Galaxy is a great one. And I got them 3 games of Race for the Galaxy, and it was the same thing. Yep. We had several other small filler games, but I broke out Race for the Galaxy early, and that was like whenever there was a gap, let's play Race again. That was great, and so we played that. I got 3 games of Race in during filler.
And what else did you play?
Well, after I played Race, they started up a giant game in the other room of Game of Thrones with the expansion for 6 players, all the extra stuff. And I have played Game of Thrones quite a few times, love the game, but there were people that never played before, so I decided to bow out. And while I was waiting, Dave showed up, and so Dave and I played Monster Apocalypse.
Yep.
And I introduced him to Monster Apocalypse.
How do you like it?
He liked it a lot to the point he was like, so how much do I have to pay to make sure I get everything? So he's talking about like buying cases already. So he really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed Monster Apocalypse. And then we topped off the night on my side. Your side topped off the night with...
We topped off the night with a Touch of Evil.
A touch of Evil. And then we played StarCraft, the board game, starting at like 8, and we got done around midnight. And so it's all over at midnight. So here's
Craig,
the thing.
Did you stay
Okay.
late too?
What's that?
Craig, did you stay late
Well,
too?
funny you should
Yeah.
mention that.
So here's what happened. So they're playing Touch of Evil. We're playing StarCraft. We both started around 8 o'clock.
Touch of Evil ends at like 10.
Yeah,
So it's like a
right.
2-hour game.
So it ends at 10. They're hanging out.
2 hours.
StarCraft ends... Yeah, but your Battlestar game was like...
No, I'm saying I'm not. Okay, fine. Yeah.
So StarCraft ends at like midnight. And we're like, we all should go home. And so we're all getting ready to go. We're like, yeah, it was a great day. It was fun.
I've
and
got all my games in a big
Craig
pile
puts
in
his
front of me.
pile of games in front of him, and on the top of his pile is the gleaming black box with the words Cutthroat Caverns on the top. And I was like, oh, I really wanted to play Cutthroat Caverns today. And everybody else was like, oh, yeah, we've heard you talk about that on the show. We really want to see. And it's like, well, how fast is that game?
I felt like I was deflating. I was like, oh, guys, it's like 12:30.
And Craig's like, well,
It-
well, you weren't really helping.
No.
It really.
I said,
it can get done in an
you
hour.
can get done in an hour if you're lucky, and if everybody if everybody pays attention. And so we started playing, and Rafe, literally the first friggin' monster that came up,
Yeah.
put a new monster on the friggin' deck every time it survived a round of combat.
No.
And nobody else is. Russ and I are like looking at each other, going, "Oh, this is gonna suck."
Someone kill this thing. Someone kill this thing.
And everybody else is like, "Oh, I'm gonna be cagey.
This is funny. This is really funny. Look at the pile grow.
This is the cool game. This is awesome."
It's
and
12:30 at night.
only Russ and I fully understand what they're doing. We ended that game at 3:30.
No, it was 2 something.
No, it wasn't.
No, it was 2.
No,
I got home by 3.
No, I got home at I got home at 3:30,
Yeah.
so it was at the tag end of the 2:00 hour.
It was late. It was late,
And
but it was awesome. It was probably the best game because you're the expansion. I'd never played the
Yeah,
expansion
yeah,
before,
yeah,
so that was fun.
Any of you guys catch flack the next morning? Because you weren't on your game.
No.
No. Sunday's my day to sleep in,
Sweet,
so I was okay.
nice.
Yeah, it was a good day for me to do that.
Yeah,
so,
no.
that worked out well.
Yep. So that's actually all my games. And then I stopped playing games.
Whew, well, then I was like, well, that's a good primer. so actually, that was. So then Tuesday comes, and I got my Descent Road to Legend game in, and we've been doing the Descent Road to Legend thing now every other week, and I am just in love with that game. And we're playing with our little crew there because Craig's been going to his play, and Ray's been in and out randomly. So I got these 5 guys that are very dedicated to it, and I had been sieging this one city with my little first lieutenant, going on great. Well, the heroes had decided they had enough of that, and I'm way ahead of them. I'm like 30, 35 against their 10 or 15, whatever they have. Or I'm almost 20 now. So overall, I'm doing great. But they go to attack my lieutenant, and they catch him in the green grass. There, we're fighting, and I'm realizing I'm losing. All my monsters are dead. I'm in trouble. So I start to run for the exit. I'll just run away, no problem. Well, the heroes get caged. They run around behind me. They block my escape. And they start pounding me, and my guy's summoning new monsters, trying to save me, and they're like turning and cutting them down. And my poor lieutenant, my little ring wraith, died horribly.
No, really?
And he's dead forever.
Yeah.
So he's Sir Alric. He's like the main one. He's got like Doom. He's like this kick butt guy. And I had to spend a bunch of experience points on my second lieutenant, thinking, I've got 2. So they just got a huge coup in the campaign.
Wow.
Which
That
actually
sounds cool.
Which was very cool, and they were all excited. They had a great time. And then I felt really good about the next battle because I was able to crush them utterly with no feeling, no pain about it. So Descent Road to Legend still awesome.
Yep.
Good.
And then a quick couple of video games we're playing. I'm playing War. Craig and Rafe and I are still playing War. Right, enjoying that a lot.
Are you still liking it?
I do. I had. I got a new PC coming, which we'll talk a little more later maybe. And I'm kind of waiting till that because I'm starting to find that my old PC plays the game fine, but in certain areas where there's lots of background environment, and really cool things, it slows down and it kind of ruins the experience. So,
my 2 cents on the War was. And this reminds me, Russ, we wanted to let people know this. Thank you for the few people that found us on the Crimneer server, and we're still there. But, Craig, I want to play War for the public quests.
Yep.
And the Realm v. Realm.
Yep.
And with the Grimnir server, it's a low population, which we picked on purpose to be able to kind of grow slowly and have a chance. But there's not that many people to do the PQ, so we switched to Destruction, not permanently, just to check it out. And we're now on the Magnus server.
Oh, yeah.
Checking out the Forces of Destruction. So if anybody wants to say hi over there.
Yep.
And I like it a lot. I mean, I really miss my Dwarf Ironbreaker, but I'm liking it a lot more, Craig, because now I can jump on. It's 8:30. I jump on. I can play for 45 minutes, do 2-3 public quests.
Oh, so you're on a more
populated. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So
yeah.
it's not
and
that
the
you're
people
on
really friendly.
So it's not that you're playing bad guy. It's that you're on a server that's more populated.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I'm fully convinced if I switched again to Order, on another populated server, we'd have the same result.
Yeah. In fact, on the server we went to, it's underpopulated for Destruction.
Really?
Yeah, we went there because there was an experience bonus for going there.
Yeah. So that's
cool.
Magnus for anybody.
They try to balance them out. They'll make it if there's a server that's over one side, they'll give the lower side.
Oh, nice.
Join the war, help out, and you'll get experience point bonuses.
Cool.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah. And please say hi. It doesn't interrupt. I don't know how you feel, Russ. But
that doesn't bother me. Say hi. I like it. In fact,
me too.
Speaking of friends saying hi, we got Rock Band 2 over the weekend, and we're playing that. And I don't know if you guys remember Julie Girl, who gave us a shout out on the show a while ago. Well, she pinged me on Xbox and became a friend of mine on Xbox. And then we're playing Rock Band 2. She joins in, and so this is just really Nicole and me. I'm on guitar. She's on drums. I'm on bass. Julie's on lead guitar. And I just think it's amazing that this person, I've never met Julie before in person. I just found her through the D6 generation, and now she lives in Pennsylvania, and here I am rocking out with this girl in Pennsylvania. Never met her before. It was just cool. It just shows you how
But your
cool.
wife's there, so it's okay.
Yeah, some wife's there. Well, actually, Nicole's got the headset on chatting, and they're like talking about girl stuff. In fact, it's funny. We're rocking out, and Nicole's like, "Oh, I love your guy's jacket. Oh, your jacket's great too." They're like going on and on about their appearance, and I'm like,
they're gushing about cyber jackets. I love it.
"Oh yeah." Well, it's funny. Well, see, Rock Band's getting crazy now. You can go online and print out shirts with your characters on them and get little figures made. It's going nuts.
And I picked out the new wood-burnished Fender Stratocaster wireless guitar. Which rocks.
Yeah, the wireless guitars are nice now. The new guitars for Rock Band are awesome. And we're playing a little Fable 2, but we'll leave that for next time because we're running out of time. So, but Grafe and I also picked up Fable 2 and had fun with that.
Cool.
Any other?
I'll talk about my thing in the modeling section. How's
Okay.
that?
Well, any other? That's it. Oh, we have some more quick achievements here. So yeah, that's gaming.
Yeah.
Whew. Let's go quick. Modeling. Any modeling
I'm
going
working
on?
on my Space Wolves, and they're still coming.
Yeah, I got a modeling pile to build up. I got to build Old Rowdy now. I still got to finish Jeremiah, so I got to get my butt on that. Rafe?
Well, I bought Drago, and I thought about Russ throwing the gauntlet down for you. We don't have to throw the gauntlet down for Craig because he's a good painter. Remember the painting contest we used to do to get ourselves going?
I do. We need to do something like that.
Just having too much fun playing Fable and War, so I didn't want to punish myself with the painting contest. And on that note, I don't know how excited you are, Russ, but I'm really excited because I just bought a brand new toy. Want to hear what it is?
Oh, what you got?
My very own doghouse system.
Oh, that's right. Your new gaming PC.
Yes, the 4850C.
Wow.
No.
I don't know what this means, but it has Crossfire graphics card. I don't know. Man.
Okay,
It
you
just
ready?
sounds good.
Now your technological guy will help you out.
Yep.
Crossfire is the ability for two graphics cards to be installed in the same machine and then work together and share the load. So what you have is you have two graphics cards working in parallel.
Sounds impressive.
That's probably a little overkill for War, but it'll be very handy in other games coming
Don't
out.
care, man. I want it.
And, well, I got a new gaming rig coming also. I've got a Frag Box coming, which is a little portable gaming PC. And so when we get our systems in, Rafe and I will talk about them and compare them.
Yeah,
and,
we'll talk about them more. We'll
and
talk the specs out.
So that'll
and
be
stuff.
later for you PC gamers out there. So that's that. And Craig, what about your Halloween party? How's that going?
Halloween party is coming up. Doing a lot of work. Games. And I'm finding that there is a slight peril that I'd never thought about.
Oh, achievement for peril.
Yeah.
We always like
It's
peril.
too perilous. And that would be doing this podcast where people listen and
Right.
and doing parties where they
Where's
don't get
my
invited.
invitation? I heard on your show.
Yeah, and it and it happens. Yeah. And I just want to say that it's a huge party, and we are trying desperately to keep the guest list balanced so that it's friends from school, friends from work, friends from gaming, friends for old friends. In fact, I'm not going to name any names, but you guys are going to see some people you haven't seen in a long time.
Ooh, he's name dropping. I like the presidential candidate's going to be there.
Indeed, they both are. No, in fact, in a continuation of our little unspoken policy on the D6G,
No politics.
there will be signs posted all over my house saying no politics
no
allowed.
hate.
There is no politics allowed. Whether or not your candidate said get in somebody's face, I don't care. It's not going to happen at my party.
All right.
Okay, and then I finished the Serenity campaign summary. I rendered down, it's almost 500 pages. I rendered it down into 23 pages of narrative treatment, like a TV treatment. I'm going to put it up on the DACA articles section, and we're going to try to put a link to that. So please check it out, because later on when we do the Serenity review, I'm actually going to touch back on it a couple times so that you guys can sort of, if you want, go there and see what effect these different rules had on the overall story arc.
Right. Very cool.
And that's me.
All right. That's achievements.
You're listening to the D6 generation. We just love playing around.
Need to add a big unit to your current force and don't feel like painting that many grunts? Or maybe you want to start a new army and really don't have time to paint it up. That's where PaintedFigs.com can help. For 3 years, their staff with over 20 years of experience in the industry have been providing gamers with high-quality, affordable paint jobs on miniatures from the most popular games, including Flames of War, Warhammer 40,000, Fantasy, War Machine, Hordes, and even a variety of board games. Their full-service packages include the cost of the models themselves at wholesale prices, assembly, painting, and basing. Because they're able to get the models wholesale, you end up with a package appearing on your doorstep full of ready-to-play models at only the fraction over their retail price. Their name says what they do. PaintedFigs.com. High-quality miniature painting at the lowest rates on Earth, even with shipping. Be sure to let them know the D6 generation sent you. And now, what's in the news? Sponsored by Mesmeron, who'd like to say everyone from Daka Daka wants to thank Yakface and the rest of the Daka crew for all their efforts in ensuring Daka Daka continues to be the premier 40K website and forum. Thanks, guys. Rackham, famous for AT-43 and Confrontation, among other games, announced today that they have finally been released from French bankruptcy restrictions and can now announce that they have been reborn as Rackham Entertainment. Rackham Entertainment will continue to support AT-43, Confrontation, and other games. Up first is their anticipated Wave 7 release, to be followed by Wave 9 in December, which will be accompanied by AT-43 Operation Frostbite. It's also expected that we'll hear of organized play and who the new North American distributing partners will be soon, as Fantasy Flight Games are no longer distributing Rackham products. Speaking of Fantasy Flight Games, it's no secret that FFG has been working on a new edition of the beloved 30-year-old science fiction board game Cosmic Encounter. In addition to updated components, this new edition will feature some new alien races which are now being previewed on the FFG website. Check back often, as new races will be revealed each week leading up to the release of the game. The clever folks over at Gale Force 9 have released a new product for wargamers called Warcogs. These plastic laser-etched templates and marker sets come in a variety of colors and include a special dry erase sheet that allows players to write down the effects of the various token symbols they put on the table. While the Warcogs are game system independent, the components included are ideal for War Machine Hordes players who may be looking for a way to keep track of various spell effects that their warcasters cast without need to own different tokens for each model. And that's what's in the news.
Hi, I'm Spencer.
And I'm Philip.
And we're the hosts of 40K Radio. Each episode, we cover the world of Warhammer 40K, including tips and tactics, news, product reviews, and our take on it as well, no matter how warped or twisted it may be. So grab a beer and go to 40kradio.com to check out the world's #1 Warhammer 40K podcast.
40K Radio reminds you to drink hard, game responsibly.
And we're back. And we have had a bunch of requests by many of our wargaming and board gaming listeners.
Brethren.
And podcasting listeners.
And podcasting listeners. What is this role-playing game of which you speak?
Well, we want to talk about two things. The role-playing game concept.
Right, that's what I mean.
And then we're going to talk about Serenity specifically.
What is role-playing is what we're asked. And so what we're going to do now is a very quick primer.
And we apologize. If you already know what a role-playing game is, we know most of our listeners know, but there are a few people who have actually asked us this question.
So we're just doing a really quick overview, okay, of what a board game, a role-playing game is.
Otherwise known as an RPG.
RPG. And really, all you've got to do is think back to your childhood, because role-playing games are make-believe. You're pretending that you're somebody else.
You sure about that?
Generally.
I've stabbed dragons before.
Yes, I know. I've been there. There are no winners and losers, although it does feel like you're losing when you die. And Rafe, what did you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I don't feel that I'm playing a role at all, even though it's called a role-playing game. Instead, what I think of as the classic role-playing game is there's no board. You know, everybody is always, when you say, D&D, they expect to see a board like a board game. Now, that's old school, because nowadays there's the board and there's the mini-map and all that. What I think of it as is I'm playing with my imagination.
Yeah.
So I have a book, I have a piece of paper, I create Carrick the dwarf, and yes, he lives inside my head, and that's the role.
Right. Aren't you taking on the role of a dwarf named Carrick?
No, I view it as like I'm the master of him. Does that make sense?
So you're Ray for the puppet master of this guy, Carrick.
Yes.
So you're looking at it more like a computer game.
That's very unusual. Yeah, actually, I played.
That was even before I played computer games. That's how I've always thought of it.
That's unusual. I think
that is odd.
So let me ask you this: when you play an RPG, and Carrick,
wait a minute, are we talking about D&D or
no?
Or
I'm
Xbox?
talking about an RPG.
Yeah, for the length of this particular podcast segment, MMORPGs don't count as RPGs.
No, and nor do computer games. We're talking about a paper dice-driven role-playing game. When you're playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
And Carrick, your dwarf, is in a bar. Mm-hmm. Do you say to the dungeon master, Carrick would like to buy a drink, or
nope,
I would like to buy a drink?
I say Carrick walks up to the bar and says, "Order me some ale."
All right,
Like
so you
that.
talk about Carrick in the third person. That's interesting.
It is interesting.
Because there are two types of role players.
There absolutely are.
There are role players who talk about the character in the third person.
Yep.
And there are role players who talk about the character in the first person.
Correct.
And I think those people, the first person folks, are the ones who really identify with the character. And
Yep.
in their heads, they are actually
They can
imagining
see
themselves as a dwarf, in the armor, looking through the eyes at the barkeeper saying, "Give me an ale."
Yep.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
There is two, and there's people. Some people think that neither's right or wrong. It's just different. That's how it is.
That's
Yeah. And I just wanted to say one more part of that. So I think of the roll not as ROLE, but with all those cool dice as ROLL. What I'm doing there is it's more like gambling. Like I know Rafe might know how to, operate a computer, but let's say think sci-fi role playing, but my character might not. So I have to roll dice to see if.
Oh, so you're like totally removed from this whole.
But not only that, in his head, he's more knowledgeable than his character.
Yeah.
See, I would have said, I don't know how to slay a dragon, so I have to roll to see if my character knows how to slay the dragon.
Yeah, it's very.
Because I personally could not slay a dragon.
Another interesting side note is that how many people who don't play role-playing games and don't really pay any attention to the genre think it's ROLL.
Yeah, a lot of people do think it's
A lot of
ROL.
people think it's ROLL.
But that's why, back in the 80s, when Dungeons & Dragons, late 70s, when Dungeons & Dragons became really popular, a lot of psychologists came out against the game, rightly or wrongly, because they talked about how role-playing, ROLE, is a psychological process used to train people, and they were concerned that it was going to do bad things to our
we all saw it.
children.
Mazes and Monsters.
Right.
Tom Hanks. Oh,
Yeah, so-
go crazy and kill your
So
mom.
anyway, not to belabor the point, but anyway.
The reason why I bring it up like that is because if there's people out there, what most non-role players or non-gamers would go, "Oh, D&D, is that where you dress up in chainmail and pretend to be a soldier?" And you're like, "No." And I'm like, "No." So in other words, if there's somebody who wanted to try role-playing, I wouldn't want them to be frightened about, getting into it and trying it out.
Yeah,
right.
Good point. But to kind of leapfrog on that, as far as role playing games go, even if you don't know what a role playing game is, you've played one.
Right.
Whether you're talking cowboys and Indians, cops and robbers, army men when you were little, it's all to do with that, except that we're doing it as a slightly more grown up version.
Right. And actors and actresses are role players.
Absolutely.
So they do.
Yep. There are three basic kinds of role-playing game. There's the most common, which is the tabletop, pencil and paper, dice rolling role-playing game. Then there's LARPing, which we try not to say too much about. That would be live action role-playing, where you do things like throw bean bags at people and it's magic missiles and things of that sort.
Right.
And then there's the newest version, really, which is play by email, which is what we did with the Serenity campaign, which is the easiest way, I think. It's got a lot of disadvantages. The plot line develops much more slowly. It's much more difficult to sort of pace everything and get everybody so that they get their own input in on time. But at the same time, it doesn't take any extra time that you have to carve out of your schedule.
Right, you don't have to get together.
Exactly. It's sort of like a special thing. I mean, it's a thing you could do over the course of your day.
Back in high school and college, when most people get really into role-playing games, you have these whole days you can just devote to sitting around a table and playing games all day and eating pizza and chips. But as you get older, of course, it's harder to find those times, especially with the same group of people all the time.
Yeah. And
that's not true, Russ. There's lots of role players that's their game night, right?
Well, I know, but I think
didn't want to get hate mail from people thinking.
No. I understand that, but I think you'll find that there's more people role play at younger ages than they do at older ages. But it's harder to find, and I think you'll find the older the gamer, the more likely they play by email.
Yeah, and play by email is really the only way I could do it, because we're talking about two different states, a whole bunch of friends that don't see each other very often, and it was great because it was really the old group for the most part.
But having said all that, my brother. Still, bi-weekly, without fail, they play Dungeons & Dragons at his house or one of their houses.
In fact, that Dungeons & Dragons game is kind of the reason we had to go email, because two of those guys played that, and they couldn't get any more free time.
Right. So there are certainly, and they play like 4 campaigns at once and interchange them and all this complicated.
Crazy.
Yeah, I can't even follow it.
So basically what you're doing is you're sitting down, and you've all got agreed upon rules to simulate this new reality that you're playing in. So you're pretending you're somebody else in a different situation. So you've got rules specifically for if you hit something you're shooting at or something that you're trying to hit with your fist or a sword, how much damage it does, successes of various types, whether you're successful.
And that's where the books you buy come in.
Exactly.
Because when you buy the Dungeons and Dragons books, that tells you how to do that in fantasy.
Exactly. That's
if you buy
your
the
rule
Serenity
set.
book, that tells you how to do that in the Firefly universe. If you buy the Star Wars one, that's how you play Star Wars.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. And as you're going, you've got your character, and that's who you are. It's who you're controlling if you're Rafe, or it's who you are if you're one of the first-person players. And they have statistics, just like in wargaming.
Right. You have stats.
Okay. There's stats. You've got your strength, toughness. It's different in every game, but they're all pretty much standard.
Rafe, please name the Dungeons and Dragons statistics. You have 30 seconds. You have 10 seconds. Go.
Strength, intelligence, dexterity, constitution, charisma, wisdom.
Very good.
Nice. And isn't there one that every now and then?
And sometimes why?
Comeliness.
Comeliness is every now
and sometimes
then.
comeliness.
And sometimes comeliness.
That goes in and out depending on the edition.
Exactly. And so you have these statistics, and that's how you generate your successes and your failures, rolling, depending on the rules, rolling dice based on those statistics against whatever it is that you're trying to do. So you've got character generation, and there's lots of different ways that you can create these characters in all these different games. The standard, the old school D&D was each one of those statistics was a number between 3 and 18, and you needed to roll what, Russ?
3d6.
3d6.
No.
For each one, yes.
Originally.
No, it was 4d6.
No.
Pick the best
Oh my
three.
God! How
well,
newfangled are you?
No. In the original one, it was 3d6.
Yeah.
Then they realized that was too random.
Right.
And then later in Dragon Magazine, they published a variety of ways
exactly
you could choose to roll your character up.
One was you roll
didn't know
3
that.
sets and you keep the one that you like.
We're talking about the old box that came with a little purple crown.
Yeah, we're talking old school.
Now, not much later, it is morphed.
Yeah.
Like in D&D 4, for example, there's no die rolling at all for your stats.
That's the direction most games
you
are
have
going.
a point system, and the reason that's better is that if player A gets lucky, gets really good stats, and player B gets unlucky, now you've got a disparity where one guy's going to be jealous of the other guy's ability, stuff like that. So the point
and
thing,
it's fantasy. There
everybody's
are
supposed to be a hero, essentially. In most games, not all games. Some games are supposed to be a little like on the 40K one we talked about. Some games you're a peon, and you're a peon all day, and some folks might find that fun.
Yeah.
But in other
what
games,
people
you're a
do
hero.
is, theyd roll a 10. They'd be like, Craig, can I just roll a 14 so I can be the paladin?
Yeah,
Sure.
and you always give in. So what's nice about the newer games is that you there's not as much rolling, and you have points to spend, and you can choose to be very, very strong. But by doing that, you're going to have weaker other abilities. Maybe your intelligence is lower, your charisma is not as good, or whatever. You choose where those abilities points are going to be.
And where I'd like to jump in here is that part is fun in and of itself. At least for me, it is. When you say, guys, character generation,
it's like
is fun.
playing with Army Builder.
And that I think that point, Rafe, is what makes a lot of people want to be the dungeon master, aka game master.
Yeah.
Because one of his big jobs is cranking out bad guy characters. So he gets to crank people all the time. So you want to
That's where you get the books and you pour over the
yeah.
books and you create the world in your mind. That part's just fun.
Right.
Yep.
So how does the game master, what's his job?
So, basically, you're talking. This is like the ultimate in co-op games.
Right.
Okay. Everybody's
great analogy.
Everybody's working together towards some
There's no
goal.
bad guy.
And there's no bad guy.
Unlike Descent, where there's an evil overlord, the game master or
in
dungeon
most
master
games,
is not
you have the guy that runs it's the game master. He knows all the secrets. He knows what's behind every door. He knows how strong the monsters are. He knows who you can trust and who you can't trust. You've got lots of these guys that we call NPCs, which stands for non-player characters, which is kind of like extras.
Would you say he's the director of the play?
Yeah, he's like the director of the play.
Because the director, sometimes when they have cast people, the cast doesn't know the full script, right?
Yeah.
So they can better act.
Absolutely.
And the director knows the whole story.
Yeah. And this, of course, is the much stereotyped dungeon master in Dungeons and Dragons.
Because Dungeons and Dragons, they call him a dungeon master. But, of course, other games just call him the game master now because they want to be generic.
Exactly. And basically how it breaks down, you've got sessions, which would be one-night game. You have adventures, which would be a series of one-night games. And then you have a campaign, which means you create a story arc that just exactly like 40K campaigns, fantasy campaigns, War Machine campaigns. You have a story arc that stretches over multiple games.
Right.
And in fact, in role playing, they can go on for years and
literally
years.
years.
And
And you just never really end. There's no real end unless you guys decide that we're going to.
Yep.
Unless some game masters some role players come up with very, very specific story arcs.
Yep.
It's kind of like TV shows, like a Babylon 5 TV shows, right? Had 5 years. That was going to be it. 5 seasons. They were done.
Well, that's also in Europe. Most TV shows have an actual story arc.
Right.
They don't just go on and on and on until their ratings dictate that they stop.
Other TV shows, right, just start and they end.
In
so your
America,
campaign
we
might do
just-
that. So yours, the game master, might have a campaign that says, everybody roll some players, we'll do a few modules, we'll see where we go. Other DMs might be like, I have a beginning, middle, and end in my head. When we're done, we're going to start a new campaign with new characters.
Exactly.
It's all up to the dungeon master. One thing, though, about the system is that I think that a lot of people will agree upon is that the game master, most of the work falls on his or her shoulders.
Yes, by far.
Unless they're just buying pre-purchased modules and running you through those, and even that though, they got to coordinate the whole thing. They got the most thinking to do because as a player, you're controlling, generally speaking, in most situations, one character.
Yep.
You're focused on one set of rules. Meanwhile, the game master, he's focused not only on making sure the players stay within the rule set they're supposed to be staying in and not trying to cheat the system, but also running however many, as they call them, non-playing characters. NPCs are in the room. So if you walk in a bar and you start talking to person A and person B and trying to get realistic background information, the game master's got to sometimes make this up on the fly.
Yep. Quite often.
But then he's got the challenge of being consistent. So it's easy to make it up on the fly, but then when it comes back later, you don't want to sound like a goob and go, whatever I said earlier was what he says again.
Exactly.
You got to kind of keep it fluid.
And it's hard. It's hard. You
very
don't want to railroad your people.
Right.
You don't want to have okay, you're in a tavern and you can go talk to as many people as you want, but they're all going to say the giant stole the princess.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to keep in mind that everything you plan that allows them freedom of choice is doubling, tripling, quadrupling the amount of prep time you have.
Right.
So if they walk in a bar with 15 people and every one of those 15 people has a different story, and in your head I just want you guys to have fun. So go. That's 15 stories you had to think through from beginning to end. Right. So there's a happy middle ground there somewhere that you want to build. But one of the main complaints people often give is that whole railroading aspect. You didn't let us have any choice. You knew for a fact that this is what was going to happen.
Right. So,
and to some of our listeners that have written in and saying, I don't quite get it. What Russ said earlier, where he likes to play his co-op game against other human beings, what's fun for the DM is you may have this, temple that they're going to go in the front door. And all of a sudden, the party doesn't go in the front door. They decide to scale the wall in the back. And you're like, oh, I didn't anticipate that. So that's what's fun is you have human beings that enter your world differently.
It's not adversarial, but at the same time, the players know that the dungeon master or the game master wants it to be a good, challenging game. Right. So you find yourself literally having to think through problems. And
many times when you are the game master and you get the whole thing set up and you have sort of the safe path, but of course they can do whatever they want. And the player's like, we're going to go this way. And whenever the dungeon master looks at you and says, well, this is going to be interesting. Yep. You know you've chosen the wrong way.
Or how about, congratulations, you've killed 6 out of the 10 commandos that have come to kill you on the island. What do you decide to do with the last 4? I don't know, draw my sword and charge them.
Right. We had, that was
read the narrative for more.
So that's pretty much what an role-playing game is.
You're sitting around a table with a bunch of friends and you're basically creating a story working together.
So we've talked about, as we said before, we've talked about 40K, the role-playing game.
Yep.
And in that game, you were focused in one particular sort of arena, a role set.
Yeah.
Then we've talked about Dungeons and Dragons, which is fantasy, but you can do whatever you want in the fantasy world you can dream up. And now we're going to talk about Serenity.
We are.
And Craig, I'm excited to hear about this because I didn't do the email campaign with Serenity because I was still doing my D&D one. So I'm very excited to kind of get the nuts and bolts of Serenity because I hear you guys talking about it so much. And I'm also dying to know what you mean when you say Cortex. Yep. So those are my 2 questions.
Well, that's the timing with this, actually, with this review that we're doing now, because Margaret Weis Productions is just about to ship their first official print run of the Cortex system, which is a generic gaming system based on the Serenity role-playing game.
And we just
and you'll be
that.
Yeah.
And also, so Serenity came first, and the rule set's so interesting they're going to pull it out and make it its own sort of generic thing.
Exactly.
They've also used the same system for their Battlestar Galactica game.
Yep.
And some other things
Battlestar
too.
Galactica role-playing game.
Yep.
Let's talk about Serenity first.
Right.
Let's not get
Okay.
ahead of ourselves.
Released in 2005 by Margaret Weis Productions. It got the Gamer's Choice Award at Origins in 2005 for Best RPG, which is really cool. I mean, that's the game that the people liked.
Yep.
And basically what you're going to be doing is role-playing in the Firefly Serenity verse, as they call it. Okay, because of licensing issues, they weren't able to get any of the stuff from the TV show. As any fan of Firefly knows, Fox was awful with all of the licensing and all of the rights.
True sci-fi fans don't like Fox.
No, not
They always kill their
Can I
sci-fi shows.
really
pause you
bad.
there a little bit, Craig?
Okay.
What does is Firefly a world inside of Serenity?
I'm gonna cover that.
Oh, you got that.
I
Okay,
got
okay.
that. You betcha.
I'm just interested.
Yep.
We'll get there.
Okay. I'm just explaining for people who already know. You're not going to see any of the TV show stuff. You can't. Niska, you're not going to see. Niska was a great bad guy. Badger, you're not going to see. Although you will see them in the NPC section, thinly veiled as generic characters.
Right.
Okay. The basic synopsis. I'm going to read from the back of the book because the synopsis is pretty true to form. The Earth got used up. We found a new solar system and used terraforming technology to create hundreds of new Earths. The central planets formed the Alliance and decided that all worlds should unite under their rule. There was some disagreement on that point. After the war for unification, many independents, those who fought and lost, drifted to the edges of the system, far from Alliance control. Out on the rim, people struggle to get by with the most basic technologies. Out here, a ship will bring you work, a gun will let you keep it. A captain's goal is simple. Find a crew, find a job, and keep flying. And basically what it is it's a space version of slightly post-war Civil War America.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with the Firefly Serenity universe,
First of all, we should slap you in the back of the head.
First of all, yeah, you've committed a crime against science fiction humanity.
Yes.
One of the best television series ever made.
Craig
About
gave me
sci-fi.
the DVDs, and I've got to just borrow
You had the
them
DVDs
again.
on you, and you didn't
But yeah, if you're not familiar with Firefly, it is basically cowboys in space.
Yep.
It really is. In fact, there's still horses running around and everything.
Yep. Because horses make new horses, and all they
that's
have
right.
to do is eat grass.
So when they colonize these worlds, they basically throw a bunch of settlers out there, throw them some horses. So it's this interesting cowboy thing where you've got, it's sort of like you have steampunk, which is sort of like the Victorian with technology. This is sort of, I don't know what to call this, but it's cowboys with technology.
It's like space cowboys.
Right.
So, Craig, when you say post-Civil War, do you mean 1875-ish time frame?
No. Basically what happened is we've used up the Earth. There's no more natural resources. It's a polluted hulk. So
That sounds scarily almost true.
Well, I would disagree, but okay. So what humanity did was they got on these huge arc ships that thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in each ship, and they just launched them, and they're not faster than light because we don't have faster than light drives. And these ships just went out, and they almost all of them made it to this system, and this system is atypical in that it has scores of planets around it, and the big planets have moons that you can go on, and they're all terraformable. So what happens is the scientists went in and they basically terraformed everything that could possibly be terraformed.
Right.
So you've got scores of inhabitable planets. And politically what happened was the first planets to be settled were the core planets where the temperature was already good and they were already habitable. And those were the most advanced because they were settled the longest, and they were the most sophisticated, and they decided that they should rule all the planets. And all the outer planets were still like, hey, we're kind of like on our own, and we like it that way.
So it led to a civil war between the core planets, sort of the bigger government, and the outer rim planets.
And the border planets.
And so when the Civil War occurred, the main character of the TV show was on the losing side.
Right.
Okay? And then
as
the war
if he was-
ends, and it's just like post-Civil War. I mean, when we say it's post-Civil War, not only is it like it because it was a Civil War and it's over, but down to the costumes. I mean, they got the pants with the stripes on the side. They're wearing suspenders.
Yeah.
They got their guns.
The term, you'll hear over and over again the term brown coat because the rebels couldn't afford uniforms, so they all wore brown coats to identify themselves.
If you studied American history post-Civil War and know the animosity that was going on between the South and the North and everything that happened right after it, the show recreates that in space.
Exactly.
And it's really interesting the way it was done.
It's an amazing, awesome.
It is a really
verse.
incredible universe.
Rather than a universe, they call it the verse.
Well, there's this whole like language you've kind of Joss Whedon sort of invented,
right? Yep.
Which is just sort of this sort of pigeon speak. Anyway, even if you're not familiar with the show, that whole concept is really interesting to role play in, and it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. And so what you have is this massive government with these super high-tech Star Wars level technologies with these huge battleships, and they control the core worlds. And the further away from that you get, the more you can. It's like the frontier,
right?
And
you get cowboys fighting like sci-fi.
Exactly.
But why are they using, or they're not using muskets? When you say Civil War, you don't mean muskets.
No, but their guns sort of look reminiscent.
Yeah,
of the era.
There's a stylistic choice to make it all
the guns
look like
and rifles and everything look like cowboy era technology,
right?
Even though it's not.
And the cool thing about role playing here is there's so many sources for inspiration. You've got the TV show, then you've got the movie Serenity. And you can get there's visual companions to both of those. There's a novel. Comic books, so there's all sorts of places you can go for more material,
inspiration.
Exactly. So that's the universe that you're playing in, and it's great. It's got awesome good guys. It's got awesome bad guys. It's just a really rich universe, and because it pulls so much from history, you can make stuff up and know that it's going to be fairly consistent if you just kind of use that as your visual map.
That's what I was going to say, Russ. What sounds really cool is you can, as a role player, you've got the futuristic type of stuff you can do, but then there's this cowboy historical.
Oh, it absolutely is. Yep.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the core mechanics.
So the core mechanics come from a game that Margaret Weis Productions in an earlier corporate incarnation called Sovereign Press. It's a game they started called Sovereign Stone, which was a fantasy game which used the same system. This was a significant departure from other systems because it wasn't just so much you're rolling against a table. You're more. This is more. You're rolling against almost like a moving target. We'll talk about that later.
And we were critical when we talked about the 40K RPG. I was very critical of it because it's so table driven.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of our fans are like, oh, but that's how RPGs are. But we had just come off of playing Serenity.
Right.
Which is, it's like we talked about before in other war games. The modern games don't require you to look things up on tables.
Right.
They
It's
either
built
into
into
the
the
dice, or it's built into the mechanics, or it's somehow built up so the game plays fast.
Yeah.
And this line of RPGs from Margaret Weis Productions and other companies too are doing similar things. They're much more streamlined, so you're spending more time role-playing and less time consulting books.
Exactly.
So we'll get into that later because I'm dying to know what that means.
Oh, yeah.
We're
going to
really
cover
soon.
the whole
We're going
thing.
to
Yep.
buzz by this next part. Get right to the good stuff.
Yeah, very good. The basic design philosophy of the Serenity system has now given birth to an entire line of RPGs for Margaret Weis Productions, including the Battlestar Galactica role-playing game, Demon Hunters, which is based on apparently a movie by the Dead Gentleman Productions.
Well, they heard about all that in the interview, so we can.
Which interview is that? Oh, the interview they'll hear later
or before. I can't remember which was
it'll
coming.
be later.
Okay.
Supernatural, the TV show, and now what they've done is the Cortex system generic rule set, which is great because you can then fit it into a fantasy or sci-fi, any genre you want. You have a favorite TV show, you buy the Cortex system and you role play it. It sounds sounds amazing.
Hey Craig,
yep.
What's that thing that Dave? I can't think of it.
Rifts.
There's another version.
Rifts.
Yes,
Rifts.
is that similar to that?
I want to bang my head against a wall.
No, it's
with
not
Rifts.
like Rifts. It's more like GURPS.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Rifts is just, to me, is the ultimate in far too complicated, way too granular rule sets.
I only meant the system.
Yeah.
Rifts and GURPS let you
a little bit. Well, Rifts had a universe that allowed lots of different things to happen in it, but it was all in the same universe.
Right.
Whereas GURPS was kind of like an open, generic system, and this is more like that.
You have to listen to the interview with Jamie. He'll tell you all about it.
He'll tell you all about it. Okay, so Serenity, the role-playing game by Jamie Chambers.
Craig really likes this game, in case you haven't noticed already. I don't know what his rating's going to be, but I'm sensing 2.
I love it. Well, I don't know.
Anyway,
I know
we'll
it's
wait
not,
to hear it.
Okay.
So what do you think of the book?
Okay, the book is awesome. It's shiny.
It is
with
shiny.
With multiple meanings.
Shiny is a little reference.
Shiny
What's
is
the book called?
It's
Serenity.
called Serenity, the role-playing game.
You just read the
Well, I
cover.
wasn't sure if it said Cortex system. Or
No. That
This
came
predates
later.
the Cortex system.
Okay, it says written by Jamie Chambers, based on a motion picture screenplay by Joss Whedon.
You're not going to read the whole book, are you?
I'm not.
Okay, good.
Page 1. No.
He's already read the back and the front, people. Okay,
I have.
I'm trying to get him to the inside.
Please,
it's taking forever.
It's the title page. Anyway, it's 224 pages, so it's a pretty big book. Okay, and it is beautiful.
You know what I like about it? It's full color.
It is full color. Each page has a background plate that just makes it all tie in, and it just looks like it came right out of Firefly or Serenity.
And you know my favorite thing about it is actually
What's that?
right after being in full color.
Yeah.
The writing style.
Oh, the writing
The
style.
language.
Yep.
Every paragraph is written in what I would call verse speak,
Yep.
which is sort of the
Kinda
pigeon
like-
cowboy language that they talk in the show.
Yep.
That's
They
cool.
say there's like wrecking and things like that all the time in the show.
Right.
And as you'll hear Jamie say later, it was written from the Ghost of Mal, sort of like the full Mal
kind of
character.
The point of view of the main
So
character.
the main hero in the show, which when you're reading the book, you kind of imagine he's telling you all this stuff about how the game works, which is really neat. Fun read.
And it's great quality. I've had mine for years. I got mine when it first came out, so 2005, and there's one ding on the whole thing, and that's my fault. So
He puts it under his pillow.
Exactly. This is no like GW book where the leaves are going to fall out or anything like
it's a
that.
nice
This
book.
is a beautiful book.
Hardcover, glossy.
On the inside, you're
awesome.
going to see lots and lots and lots of screenshots from the movie,
And let me
as
just
well as original artwork.
Let me say this about the book too. If you are a fan of Firefly and Serenity, and you hear us saying things like Brown Coat, and you know about it, and you're out there cheering, going, "I can't believe they canceled that show!"
Yeah,
you need to go buy this book. I don't care if you hate role playing games, never play role playing games. Just the stuff about the universe and the system and all the fluff in it about Serenity is worth getting.
Yep,
I'm interested. And can you still find it? Is
Oh
it out of
yeah.
print?
Oh yeah.
In fact,
No.
Jamie mentions in the interview later that they're on their third printing now.
Okay, good.
Or
Yeah.
sixth
Good.
printing.
Sixth, I think.
Some huge printing. It's selling like
So
hotcakes.
somebody Google Serenity role playing game,
It's
they'll
out
find
there.
this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Oh,
It's not
absolutely.
like there's not like 10 of them.
No, and if you go to your friendly
I-
local gaming store,
Yep.
they can order for you. No
I
problem.
almost bought. There's a new adventure pack that just came out,
out.
and I almost bought it at Borders.
Yeah, expansions are hitting the streets even
Okay,
now.
so they're full bore supporting.
This
the
isn't
game.
some old dead game. This is still
no,
hot
no,
and
no,
going.
Exactly. I mean, and this is their primary property now. This Cortex system that's based on this game.
Okay.
It's got an awesome table of contents. It's very, very, very. It's actually still written in that sort of verse speak.
But it has one of my pet peeves. There's a pet peeve in there.
There's a pet peeve. There is no index.
Yeah, no
Okay,
index.
which is bad. I agree. Also, as I was writing out the bullet points, I was like, I wish there was.
I
an
wish there was an index too.
Did
Minor-
you task Jamie of that?
No, we didn't pick on him
it
for it.
didn't
But
really come
Jamie,
out.
if you're listening, put an index in there.
Yeah, indexes are good. There are 10 solid sections in here, and they cover everything from creating the character to role playing. Your game master doesn't need an extra book. All the game master stuff is in here, and a massive background section on the verse. It has ships. It has NPCs. It has an awesome section on all the planets and the moons that get mentioned in the show and the movie, and different customs. And of course, the very back section is how to speak dirty words in Mandarin Chinese.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. When the China is a huge superpower when things happen. So
when
everybody
when
speaks
the Earth got used up, it was all
Everybody
British,
sp-
English people, and
in
Chinese.
So everybody speaks in Chinese, and half the time the characters are swearing in Chinese. It's a really funny little aspect
It's
of the show.
great. In fact, it was an awesome mechanism they used in the show because you knew they were swearing up a blue streak, but it was all Chinese.
So you couldn't tell.
So there was no beep or no. Well, they say goram. But other than that, it's not like they're making up fake. They're like, and some of the if you listen to the.
If you know Chinese, apparently
if you
it's
know
pretty
Chinese,
funny.
apparently it's really grotesque. Okay, so anyway, so that's the book. Great book, beautiful. Any fan of Firefly and Serenity should have this book. Although the choice of going with an actual painting of the Firefly on the cover is a little odd to me. It's a very nice, colorful cover, but it doesn't have kind of the pop of an actual screenshot.
No.
But what are you going to do?
Minor point.
Okay, so from our little role-playing tutorial, you know that as a player, you're going to start with
A character.
You need to build a character. So,
Or in Rafe's case, a puppet.
a flesh puppet.
A paper puppet.
A paper puppet. Yeah.
He's like the character on Heroes last week.
I don't know. I didn't see it
Oh,
yet.
you
It's
didn't
on
s-
TiVo.
what about the week before?
It's on TiVo.
The week before.
TiVo.
He's a puppet master.
I want to hit you.
Right.
So anyway,
I want to hit him too this time.
yeah,
Hit him.
no, okay, he's annoying. Okay. The Serenity system breaks your characters down into 3 types right off the bat. If you want to start like in the Dark Heresy era, and you
Right.
want to start like as a little
As a peon.
You get what's called a greenhorn.
That's the guy from Orcs and Humans that says, okay.
That's right. Okay. With a greenhorn, you get 42 points to build your character. We'll explain that in a second. You can be a veteran. You get 48 points. Or
Now, we talked about the systems that use points so you don't have to roll dice. Here we go.
exactly. This is a system where there is no randomness in your character. You get
Right.
to be who you want to be, which I think is ideal because
Yeah, it is ideal.
it was
Yeah.
really annoying. I'm going to be a knight, and I've got a
Favorite thing about
strength of
D&D 4
4
is that fix.
Yeah,
Whatever.
exactly. And then the third, the largest type, or the most advanced type, is the Big Damned Hero.
Big damned hero.
Big Damned Hero. And the Big Damned Hero is the equivalent of the characters from the TV show.
Right.
Okay? So you've chosen your heroic level. Next thing you got to do is choose traits. This is a great, great, great mechanism in this game. You have assets and complications. You have to have one of each. And there's just a slew of them in this book. And you're going to gain or lose points towards building your attributes and your skills, etc., based on what you get. Basically, you add 2 points to your total for each complication, or major complication costs 4, or you have to subtract 2 or 4 for every minor or major asset. And you're talking about, for instance, for assets, excuse me, you can get Born in the Saddle.
Right.
Which means you're an amazing horse rider and nothing.
It's a cowboy thing again.
It's a cowboy thing. You can take athletic, which means you're better at dodging.
Right.
You're better at taking people down physically. You can take one that's called intimidating manner, which means you're better at facing people down.
So basically, you can pick positive attributes, which cost you points.
Yeah.
Or you can take negative things. Like, what's an example of a negative one?
Negative things, we have amorous, which means you basically have to hit on everything of the opposite sex and
So
maybe
basically,
both sexes.
you're insatiable.
Yeah.
A bleeder, which would be somebody that's easier to wound. or
Yeah.
harder
Well,
to
no,
heal.
actually, a bleeder is once you take any kind of wound, you immediately start taking additional wounds
There you
until
go.
you get first aid.
So you take these weaknesses, and then which gives you more action points to put them somewhere else. So
Right.
you can make a overpowered section, but you're going to have these weaknesses you got to deal with, and you got to role play them. Now,
And they really provide you with some awesome hooks for your role playing.
and if you got a good GM, a game master, he's going to force you to live with your decisions.
And in fact,
which Craig did to us very very well.
It was a blast. And
I had a gambling addiction.
Yes.
Was it me?
No, it was cigarettes.
Oh, I was addicted to cigarettes, and there was a scenario where we got trapped on this island. Like,
No,
couldn't get any
well,
more.
there was that. That was bad enough. You ended up on a space station where you weren't allowed to smoke
Smoking
at
was
all,
outlawed.
and he ended up in a bar where it was.
and he's like strolling me. He's like, all your tests are negative. Like, I'm like, oh, you bastard.
It was awesome because he walked into a bar that was wreathed in smoke, and he was like, "Oh, thank God!" And it took him like a half hour to figure out that the smoke was artificial, that was just there for the atmosphere.
Oh,
And he's like looking around. He's like, "Oh no, you don't see anybody smoking. Sorry."
That was awful.
And the game actually rewards you for playing those complications, and
Right.
there's a mechanism we'll talk about in just a second where you get bonuses in the game for playing these complications. And another complication is little person, which also
Joe
we
was
had to
little
deal
person, yeah.
with. You're actually like, I don't know what the politically correct term is.
Little
now.
person.
I think it is.
I think the little person is actually
Little
the
person.
right.
Okay, there you go. So once you've chosen all of that, now you know how many points you have because you've got your adds and you've got your bonuses and your subtractions based on your traits. So now you're going to generate your attributes. In this game, you're talking about agility, strength, vitality, alertness, intelligence, and willpower.
Right.
Okay? And basically what happens is with those points that you have, you're going to pay for different dice types. So not a number of dice, but different dice types.
So this game brings back all the cool
all
shaped
those
dice.
cool shaped dice.
See, the D20 systems, which are the very popular role-playing
Yeah,
games,
They got rid of almost all
phased
of
them all except for D20s, but this game brings them all back.
except the D20. In fact, they're kind of prideful about the fact that you don't use a D20.
Yeah, I think that's a little dig at
Yeah, I think it is.
their former friends.
Oh, okay, exactly. And
So,
basically, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You might explain it.
Basically, for each of those attributes, you're going to have a certain die type, and you're going to pay points for. For instance, if you want a D12, you're going to pay 12 points for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that all the time.
And you get that all the time.
Higher the dice type, the better.
Higher the die type, the better. And as a beginner character, no matter which of the 3 levels you begin on, you're going to have at least a D4, and the best you can get is a D12 plus D2. Okay.
Okay. So there's no percentile dice either then.
Nope. No, it's all these different.
That's all been
die
done
types.
before. We've been there.
Yeah, it's all going to come down to die pools.
Right.
So once you've done that, and that's all going to come out of those points that you have.
Right.
Then you have
Can your vitality be D4 plus D12?
No, it would be D12 plus D4. The highest it can ever go is D12 plus D12, which means you're basically
That's
godlike.
what I meant. That's what I meant. Okay.
You're godlike. Okay, and then there's 2 derived attributes. Your life points in this game are not your hit points. You don't roll for them randomly or anything like that. Your life points are basically your strength and your vitality, or it's your vitality and willpower, I think, added together. So that gives you a number. And then your initiative is a die pool that's basically your agility and your alertness.
Right.
Okay? And so the way that wounding works in this game is awesome because you've got your life points, but you have them twice on your character sheet. And they're stun life points on one level and they're wound life points on the other. And every time you get hit, like basic damage, which would be something falls on you, you take half and half. So half stun damage, half wound. You lose all your stun damage, you're unconscious. You lose all your wound damages, you're dead.
Right.
Okay? If you're fighting with your fists, it's only stun damage, unless you have the special ability Mean Left Hook. And wound damage, which would be a gun, is just straight wound damage.
Right.
And this is the way armor is dealt with, too, because you can have body armor, which changes all the wound damage to stun damage. So Dave actually had this massive helmet on at one point and got hit by a 50 caliber slug, and it all got changed to stun damage, but he was completely knocked unconscious because of it.
Let's give an example, though, before we go too far into how this works. So you get your strength, and you decided to make your strength a D8.
Yeah, D8's good.
D8.
D8 is average.
Now, so I'm trying to pull a door open.
Okay.
How does that D8 help me out?
Well, what you're going to do next is you're going to choose your skills and abilities, and they are going to give you a second die type to throw at that skill. So every check that you do...
So if it's a straight-up strength check, I'm just trying to pull open a jam door.
Straight-up strength check is actually strength plus strength. So if you're a D8, you're going to roll 2D8, and I, as the GM, I'm going to assign a difficulty rating to that.
Okay.
And that difficulty rating, if it's going to be relatively easy, I might say, it's got a very weak lock, it's a 5.
Okay.
I might say it's a safe, so it's 20.
So it's normally your attribute plus your skill type. So if I'm shooting my gun, it might be my agility.
Be probably agility plus
my gun skill.
Yep.
But if I'm doing a pure test, like a pure agility test, like a chandelier's falling on me, I'm trying to get out of the way, and there's not really a skill for dodging chandeliers.
Well, there actually is.
Well, let's pretend there isn't one.
Okay, no, get him.
There is not a... Anyway.
There's a dodge skill.
Okay, well, fine.
Athletic dodge.
Right, okay, let's say I don't have athletics, or let's say it's pure agility.
Okay.
So it would be agility plus agility.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
But you're saying most of the skills for those kinds of things do exist.
Yes, and this game is very... Like with the Dark Heresy game, you are so tied to the tables, I felt like my hands were tied. This game is almost 100% at the game master's discretion. So you do not want to play this game without a good game master that's going to attention to detail and that you can trust.
The next thing someone's going to ask is, okay, so I get the part where the player knows what he has to roll to dodge the chandelier.
Yeah.
Let's say we got dodge in there now. So let's say I've got a D. I'm a really good dodgy guy, so I've got a D10 in agility.
Yeah.
And I've been working on my dodge skill, so I'm like D4 in dodge.
No,
is that realistic?
No. The dodge is an advanced skill under athletics, so it would always be over a D6.
Okay, so it's D6. Let's see. So I'm going to roll D8 plus D6.
Yeah.
Or did I say D10? D10 plus D6.
Whatever. Yeah.
Okay, to dodge a chandelier. Now the tricky part is that's all written down on the page. That's easy to remember. The tricky part is how does the GM decide how difficult the chandelier falling is?
Well, that's subjective.
Okay. Or he's going to dodge a bullet being shot at him. How does he know that?
That's the game book gives you examples of each type, but ultimately it's subjective.
Right.
The great thing is once you've assigned a difficulty rating to that skill check, their die roll indicates how badly they've failed or how well they've succeeded. And it gives you these guidelines for, well, if it passed by more than 5, then it's awesome. You did this. And if you passed by more than 10, then it's like
so
godlike.
There's degrees of success
there's degrees of success or failure.
So if I barely dodged the chandelier.
And if you missed it by a little, I'd say it grazed your foot. You did some stun damage to your...
If I dodged a little bit I got away but barely, you might say I'm falling down, but I got away.
Exactly.
From it.
Yep.
If I got really well, if I roll, stand right up, and I'm ready to attack.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happens. If you roll phenomenally, you've done a shoulder roll, you come up with both of your pistols drawn, and you're already got a bead on the other guy.
Right.
And that's the guidelines are in the book, but it's really you need a storyteller for your game master is basically what it amounts to.
So, Craig and Russ, is that the part where you guys were saying you don't really need to consult the tables once you get a handle of what the difficulty?
Yep.
Yeah, there are no tables. The only thing in there is a bunch of examples of the kinds of
there's a table, but it's very basic.
I remember it's like to bash a standard door would be this to
exactly. Or these are the kind of things you might try. Here's different ways, and even if there's something that's not in the book, it's pretty easy for you to put together like. Okay, well, that sounds like an agility plus this skill, and or vitality plus that skill. If you're drinking a nasty drink, let's say I'm trying to drink another guy under the table, right?
Which did happen.
Now, that's the kind of thing. It's like, why would you have rules for that? Well, you can't just say I drink the guy under the table and the GM decides yes or no. You got to have it rolled to see what that's going to happen in the story. So he says I'm going to drink the guy under the table, so it might be an opposing vitality check plus whatever other skills you have. I don't know if there's actually a drinking skill in the game.
There is.
There actually might be.
There is.
See, one of the things that's cool about this game is because the mechanics are so simple. Okay,
there's more room for cool
stuff. There's plenty of room for examples to give the GM a guide on how to do this stuff. So, you take, there's drinking's already. So I just picked something out of my hat. I'd forgotten there was a drinking skill. And I would drink the guy on the table, so we're both going to make opposing rolls. So maybe, let's say, if I beat the guy by enough, maybe I drink him on the table immediately. If it's close, maybe like the GM says, well, we got to go another round. He downed his drink too.
It's called heavy tolerance.
Heavy tolerance. There you go. So there's all kinds of but basically you can kind of figure out based on the stats what you want to have happen.
Right. And this is the table for action difficulty. Ready? If it's easy, it should take a 3.
Right.
Average should be a 7. Hard is an 11. Formidable is 15. Heroic is 19. And then it goes incredible, ridiculous, and impossible.
Right.
And it's all right. I mean, you could do it, but impossible is a 31, which you can imagine you're throwing a few D12s. And
so that's when a guy says, you tell the players, okay, there's a steel bulkhead sealed airlock door in front of you. And the guy's like, I break it down with my shoulder. Well, that's clearly impossible. You can roll.
You can try. And the amount by which you fail.
But if it's a flimsy little wooden door that's half hanged down by a half a hinge, you can say it's a 3. To break through the door.
Okay. So so there you go. So that's. I
didn't mean to drill you there.
That's
but I
okay. No. I like it. You've got your skills. When you're buying your skills and abilities, you're using the same number that you started with, including the points that you lost or gained for traits plus 20. Okay. So you've got a few more points to play with, and then again you're buying die types, and it's exactly the same way. A D6 costs 6 points. A basic skill, which is very basic, your athletics, for instance, costs you. You can go up to D6. You can only take a basic skill up to a D6, and then you're specializing in something. So you could take shooting up to a D6, and then pistols up to a D12, for instance, and maybe assault rifles up to a D10 if you're Jane, and things like that. Some examples of skills: you've got piloting, gunnery, medical skills, tactics, close combat skills. Okay, so you get to basically flesh out your character.
There's a lot of non-combat skills.
There's a whole bunch of social non-combat skills.
I just gave off examples of I dodge, I drink a guy under the table, I flirt with a girl.
Yep.
That's all in there, right?
That is all in there.
So the ones that are in there like appraise, bluff, blather.
Ready?
Blackmail.
You've got perception. You've got planetary vehicles. You've got technological engineering. You've got survival. Oh, look, here it is, right there. There's a whole table.
Endurance.
Well, there's lots of them, and you can't read them all in here. But there's a bunch. But one thing I should point out here, because I didn't see it on Craig's bullets, although I might be planning to mention it later. But one little aside about spaceships in this game. Now, am I correct? Spaceships are like characters in this game.
They are just
so
like characters.
So essentially, you roll up your spaceship.
Yep.
It's got its own...
Well, you make your spaceship. You don't roll it up.
The GM might make it for you. But,
yes.
But yes, there's a depending on how you're going to do it. But let's say...
general way you make a character,
so
you
the
make
GM makes a ship, and it's got stats. Like, it's got... basically
it's got perception. It's got all the same statistics.
And the fluff ties together. So the perception on the ship is its scanners, and the agility of the ship is its maneuverability.
Which is another way that the book saves space.
And it saves tons of space. So when two ships fight, it's really just two characters fighting. But the pilot in the ship, his piloting skill, adds to the ship's other abilities. So when it does its agility check to dodge lasers, that's the pilot's piloting skill plus the ship's agility, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So that's really cool.
So simple mechanic, exactly the same thing. So you can have really cool space battles with the exact same mechanics that I shoot a pistol at another guy. It's not like classic games like Traveler, where it's a whole other book.
Yep.
You know,
Right.
for how to fight.
Oh, yeah.
Not to say that wasn't cool. It was cool, but it's just in order to play the game and not look. Okay, let's break out the spaceship combat book and spaceship combat in 3 weeks. You know, of role playing. Let's get that out.
Yep.
It's all right there. It's the same exact mechanics.
Exactly.
And what's really cool about it, my favorite part about it is, in the show, you really grew to love the Serenity, the ship, the Firefly cast ship. So just for the people who aren't fans of the show, the TV series is called Firefly. Firefly was the class of the vessel that the main characters flew around the universe in.
Firefly class mid-bulk
The
transport.
name of the ship, they named it the Serenity. And so the movie's called Serenity, the show's called Firefly. You grew to love this ship as a character almost. It was just such a interesting, strange little ship, and you just sort of grew to love it. Similarly to how you love R2-D2 in Star Wars. And what's cool about the way the game character is, the ship becomes a character. And it's interesting, when our ship in Craig's campaign crashed, I physically felt like one of my friends was in the campaign, like not a real life friend, but like in a D&D campaign, you had a close character for a long time. He gets killed or really badly wounded. You're like, you killed Borlock the Invincible. I'm going to kill you now. You know, when my ship got shot down, I was like, God, I was almost madder about that than I was about our engineer being wounded in the back.
Well, you didn't like the engineer.
I didn't like the engineer being able to advance me, but that's really something that was a cool idea because it so captured the essence and theme of the show. Because really the heart of the show is about the relationship between the main character Mal and his ship, and how his ship represents his last effort of freedom that he feels he lost as a result of the Civil War result. Not to get too deep here, but that's basically the underlying plot of the show, and it's really neat to see how they capture that in that. So.
It's awesome.
So that's my side.
And I didn't put
really
that
cool.
in.
But that's the ships. So you don't need to know. There's not a whole other ship combat book.
No.
It's just ships.
Exactly.
In space.
Yep. And it's great because you can buy little packages in the book that like upgrade. It'll basically say your standard ship looks like this, and then if it's a military ship, it gets these bonuses, and if it's a civilian ship, it gets these bonuses. And it's great.
And it gives the GM a lot of cool options to make really cool different ships. Because he can just decide. He doesn't have to get really super detailed. It's like, well, this ship should be more maneuverable than the hero ship, but maybe less firepower. So I'll just lower the agility of the ship and raise the gunnery skills of the ship. That kind of
it's
thing.
great.
Or
It's
versa.
greght. The thing it isn't, it's if you're like a technophile and you love your little ship charts and your all the how does it exactly work? This is not the game for. Again, this is all plot and characters, and the ships are characters. So it's not full of the specs and everything
true to the
like
show
that.
too.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the show is not like Star Trek, where there's all technobabble all the time on Star Trek. And I love Star Trek. Don't get me wrong, but the phasers, and you're always wondering how that works. In this show, it's almost like there's technology, but it's shaped like a cowboy gun. You don't even. It's just a second. The fact that they're in space is almost like ancillary to the theme of the show.
In fact,
so
Greg, I was actually thinking the reverse because that gets it gets my imagination going.
Well,
that's
right.
what it is. It's all imagination based. It's not
totally imagination driven. It's not like
I can build the ship inside my mind any way I want, rather than having to be forced to look at a Star Trek Enterprise.
Now, the funny thing is that the book does have a tiny little table that's called the Technobabble table.
There you go.
Because consistent technology is so unimportant that when you need to come up with a term for something,
you just roll 3 words.
You roll
3 syllables and add them together. Basically,
you roll a D6, a D8, a D10, and a D12, and that shows you
Technobabble.
The primary boot cracked. We have no ability to steer or maneuver.
Right, whatever that means.
Okay. Or the power feed exploded. The landing gear won't function. See? Right? Just those were 2 things right off the chart that were just, it's awesome because it's like blah, 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 and it doesn't
matter.
The key thing that Joss Whedon said over and over about this when people asked him, like, is there speed of like faster than light travel and what's going on, blah, 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 blah. He would always tell you that Serenity moved at the speed of plot. And that's the key to this whole thing, is that it's all about the plot. It's not about the technical elements of it. Right. That's in there. There's a little bit of that in there, and you can build up as much as you want, but it's all about the story, the plot, the character.
Just repeat to yourself, it's just a show. You should really just relax.
Exactly. Okay. And then when you're building a character, you got your final touches like normal. You got gear, clothes, background, all that stuff, and it's all in here. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. So, the game mechanics, which we've actually pretty much covered.
Yeah, any little details you want to cover?
Okay.
So we talked about how you make your opposing skill checks.
You got your effort test, so your GM's discretion for how difficult it is, and it's attribute plus skill for most of it. when you're talking adversarial tests, if you're fighting somebody, it's your attribute and skill versus their attribute and skill.
So their dodge and their agility versus my gunship and agility or something.
And you use that initiative that's a derived attribute also. And basically how much you beat them by is how much damage you do.
How well you hit them.
And that's modified by like the
Which
weapons.
again gives a great ability for the GM to instantly, because one of the challenges the GM has is he's got to your game master should never say in a role-playing game, you hit him for 3 points of damage. Of course, some game masters do that, but a lot of role players really prefer the GM to say, I grazed his shoulder, I hit him right in the gut, I got him in the forehead, and the success of the roll dictates that without having to go to a separate table and look up a critical hit or some other methodology of figuring it out.
Yeah.
You simply look at the success. If the guy totally owned the other guy's number, you can get him right in the forehead and say insta-kill if you want, versus you graze the shoulder, he's not going to feel that in the morning. It's a big deal.
Yep. And the one thing we haven't talked about yet are plot points, which I think is a great mechanic that they introduced in this game. And plot points, they give you
this is not unique to this game, I should say. Other games have started. But go ahead, describe it.
But it's great in this game.
I'll give credit to other games too. Yes,
okay.
Go ahead. Please.
Basically, you start with 6 when you first build your character. You start adventuring. You earn more over the course of the game by doing cool things, and the GM rewards you by giving you plot points, or by playing your complication. Mm-hmm. So every time Russ did something bad, like broke a sensor so he could have a cigarette, he would earn.
I'm the guy in the airplane stall.
Exactly.
I was breaking this. Do not remove this.
Exactly, because these guys started out as Alliance fleet officers, and they kind of frown.
Don't smoke, kids.
No, smoking is bad.
I don't really smoke. That's my character smoke.
Exactly. And so every time you work that, then you actually get some plot points as a reward. And the way that you spend your plot points, you can change die rolls with them. You can add bonus die rolls.
Right.
So you can spend a plot point to pop up a die roll by 1, or you can spend a plot point to add a die to your die pool if you really want to succeed at something. You can survive certain death with your plot points. Or one of my favorite, you can use them with your traits also. You can use them with your skills and your traits, kind of like spend a pot. Like one of the guys had machine empathy, and he spent a plot point and would instantly know what was wrong with a machine based on a die roll, whether he really did it well or he kind of get a vague idea. And the best part is you spend plot points to change the plot of the story.
Right.
If you don't like what's happening to your character, or you feel like you're in a bind or you're in a corner, spend your plot points. And basically what you do is you say, okay, Craig, I'm going to spend 6 plot points because I think you've put us into a corner. I want to have a way that we can get our ship to someplace safe without getting caught.
Right.
And I say, well, okay, you spent 6, and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at exactly where we're going and what I have planned, and think, now how can I take his idea and throw him a frickin' bone, and is it worth 6 plot points? So if you said, like, Craig, I just walked into a pit full of vipers and kicked them. I want to get out. Here's 1 plot point. I'll be like, congratulations, I'm going to take your plot point, and the first snake misses you. Okay, you're still dead.
Well, let me give you an example of plot points, how I was introduced to them. There's a very, very classic art role-playing game called Top Secret. And in this game you played a James Bond type spy. And they had hero spy points. It was like you could spend them to get out of these situations. And the way it was described in that game, and I've always remembered it this way, is whenever you watch a James Bond movie and Bond is in serious trouble, he's being choked, and he's fighting a bad guy in a bathtub, and he's choking him, and at the last minute he looks to his left and there's a space heater, and it's just within reach. The space heater's there. Well, that's in the game. It was you spend a heroic point, and whenever James Bond needs to reach just in time to save the day is always just within reach. Whatever it is. So that's this sort of thing. It's like these plot points are because you're the hero, and there's always just the right moment to save the hero's day. But it's a built-in mechanic to the game, so you can't always have this heroic moment. You got to save them for just the right time and really decide it's there for you.
Yeah.
I don't know though. Think that changing the plot sounds pretty unique.
Well, it is. Yeah, that's certainly a very interesting way to do it. Yeah,
and it was used a couple times in our campaign.
Did John use it?
John used it
because we were at one point we were totally hosed, and John's like, I want to," and he ended up turning into this contact he had that got us out of this really big jam and actually helped us in the underground to get away from this situation.
Totally changed the plot of the
it was cool.
the campaign, which I thought
Sounds
was awesome.
what's really cool too, Craig, which I know you're a big fan of. It's all role playing. So you use the plot points, but then that gives the GM and the characters a new chance to role play.
And what's cool is John helped write that. I mean, it wasn't just Craig going, "Okay, I got to think this up."
That's what I mean.
John, so the players, so it makes the whole story a collaborative effort.
Basically, to use the plot point to change the plot, you have to present the GM with what you want, the basic result you want.
It's got to make sense and be reasonable.
And it has to make sense and be reasonable. And there's again, it's all about guidelines in the book. There's a few tables, but it's mainly guidelines, and the guidelines tell you, well, for one plot point, hey, you forgot that 5-credit note that you had in your pocket. Congratulations. Right. And for 6 plot points, it's like, oh my God, that's my old buddy, my old army buddy, and he can get us the security clearance we need,
Yeah, cool.
And it's great. And then also the way that you advance in the game is your plot points translate into advancement points at the end of each session.
Is that equal experience?
Exactly. It's kind of like your experience. In addition to, you also get rewarded with more advance points by the game master. So at the game master's discretion, he might give you between 1 and 6 more based on.
So if you save your plot points through the chapter, you get to advance better.
Exactly. And you can carry plot points forward.
So you don't want to throw them away unless you have to.
Them. Yeah.
You get awarded plot points, right?
Exactly.
Not advancement.
Well, you get awarded plot points, but then you can also spend your plot points on advancements.
Right.
If you don't use them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The ideal scenario would be you end the session with 12 plot points, which is your maximum. Mm-hmm. Then you store 6 plot points for your next session, so that you start with 6 plot points. You pass on 6 to your advancement points, and you get awarded 6 advancement points. So you're banking 12 advancement points.
So, Craig, is it kind of like this? I save the day with a fantastic roll of my machine knowledge. I hack into a computer.
Yep.
And I was really creative in how I did that.
Right, because it wouldn't be the role that made you give those points. It would be the idea of what you were trying to do rather than the success or failure.
Right. But let's say I roll really major, too.
And that's cool, too, yep.
Does it work like, and then in that room we find a chest, and there's 150 credits and a laser pistol, and Rafe, you get a plot point. Is it like that?
No. In fact, the way they do it, it's awesome. They actually sell prop money from the movie and the TV show now. And they recommend, or poker chips, or something that's really thematic. And they recommend when you're playing around a table that you almost throw it at the guy. And be like, there you go, man, good shot. And you throw him a poker chip or a buck, or a credit dollar bill. And it's up to them to keep track of all that stuff. But it's more inside the game that you get it. You know what I mean? It's not like, you open the chest. There are 30, X, Y, Z, and a plot point. It's not like that. It's more like a shot to the arm.
You role played that scene really well. Here's a plot point.
Right.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Not there's 10 plot points in a chest. You know what I mean?
Right.
No, I meant because I meant that in the way that at the end of the scenario, not the session, you're sort of looting through all the treasure, and then the DM gives you your experience.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of old school to be looting through treasure at the end of every scenario, but okay.
Yeah. I think basically what you're saying is yes, the case. That's the case.
Right. So what do we think of this thing?
Overall impressions, right? Well, I love it because it rewards role playing. Everything in the game.
I have a question on that, by the way.
Okay, go ahead.
Craig, have you played this live? Because I'd be very interested to play this game live. Because what I'm wondering is, I think play by email rewards role playing, and I just wondered if you found a distinction there.
I have not played it live, but the way the game is designed rewards role playing.
Okay, right.
Like it's the way the plot points work, and the way that you use your plot points and you gain new plot points. The way the complications,
like the D&D 4 has that now. You get experience.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
So the game mechanic itself, the mechanics of the game itself, reward role playing.
Right.
And I want to point out to new role players, and correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, that doesn't mean you have to sit around the table or in the email and go, "Arg, ye mateys, I want to order an ale," which is role playing. You can obviously talk in character, but it also means coming up with the creative solution to the problem. Right?
I would say it's like a combination of the two.
I think also you're saying that it rewards role playing, and that if you play the character you created.
Right.
Yes.
So many players will create a character that has weaknesses and strengths, and then go off and play themselves. In other words, their character is weak.
In fact,
they try to make themselves strong.
Yeah.
Right.
Or my favorite example is in Rifts, you take all of your skills in things that you need to roll to succeed at.
Yeah.
For instance, combat and things like that, and you don't take any of the skills that are in Rifts and built into the system, like tactics or strategy or negotiation, because you know that as a human being, you're going to role play negotiation, and the GM's just going to let you do it.
Right.
So you're like you're loading all of your points and your advancements into the things that are going to cause you to have to roll dice.
But in
and
this
you're gonna
game,
roll
if you're negotiating, the
it's all built in.
Right. He can, and in 40K it sort of has the 2 of the percentile system,
Yeah.
but basically you can say, I'm going to role play. So it's my intelligence plus my negotiation skill, and if I took crappy for negotiation skills, I'm not really going to do much.
And the GM might, at his discretion, give you bonuses for your role playing. But ultimately, you're going to have to play the character that you made up, and you can't min-max that character.
You might drop the difficulty by 3 points.
Exactly.
If you did a really good,
Yeah.
verbal.
Yeah. So it emphasizes characters because of the way you build them, and the ships are characters, that whole thing. And it's very difficult to matrix or power game the system because of what we just said.
Well, also, there's not that much system to power game.
That's true.
It's definitely
a very fluid
one
system.
of the lighter in terms of rule set
Yep.
role-playing games you're going to find.
Yep.
And that's a double-edged sword.
Right. Yeah. If you're out there and you're cursing my name because I don't like Rifts, you're probably not going to like this game.
No, probably not.
I think it's awesome for fans of the show and the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost a must-have because it's got all that information about all the different planets in the back, and it's got all the screen caps in it. Like I said, technically minded players are not probably going to be enjoying this overly much. It's too soft. It's too fluffy. It's too dependent upon the role playing and not enough on the technical and the mechanical aspects of it. The whole speed of plot thing is going to
if you
really
like a lot of
bother.
mechanics in your role playing game.
Right.
This is not for you.
And I really do wish there was an index.
Well, and also we should say that unlike D&D 4, where it's almost a miniature war game on a grid.
Right.
With
none of
cool
that.
plot around it. There's no sophisticated combat system.
Exactly.
This goes back to the roots of role playing, which is basically, as Rafe said earlier, right? It's all in your imagination.
Yeah.
The DM says the guy's about 20 yards away from you. What do you do? It's not like I'm going to slide to the left and dodge. I mean, there's a lot to be said for the D&D 4 thing. I really like that system, but that's a different experience than this is.
It's very
not better or worse, just different.
And I liked the D&D 4 also,
Right.
but and this is a totally different. That almost brings wargaming into the
And that's what I'm saying. It's
role-playing
mechanics
environment.
light, because if you're playing D&D 4 is especially now, it's really into the combat mechanics and all there. There's pages and pages of book about that.
Yeah.
Where this doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So
And
what do you think? How are you gonna
I don't
rate
know
this
if I say what I want to say. It's
Want me to rate first
totally,
again?
No.
It's not like I stole your thunder. I don't want to do that to you again
I'll
here.
do it. I'm going to say if you're a brown coat, it's a 2+. If you are a role player who enjoys that character side of role playing, it's a 3+. And if you're a Rifts player who's hardcore into your tables and your technical elements, it's probably going to be a 5+. So I'm giving 3.
So, Rafe, you want to go next, or you want me to go next?
You go next because I'm not going to rate it, but I have a question since I haven't played it.
Do you want me to ask me now, or you want to wait till?
I'll ask you now.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Russ. I'm only asking Russ, Craig, because I know you're a fan.
All right.
So Craig says, "Hey, Russ, next Tuesday I'm going to run a D&D session or a Serenity session. Which one do you choose?"
I would choose.
And why? And why?
Well, I would choose
No pressure.
Serenity only because I'm currently playing in Descent, and that gives me my D&D fix. Whereas there's no equivalent sci-fi thing, and also I am definitely colored by the fact that I'm a huge fan of the Serenity and Firefly universe. So
and on that
that's
note,
definitely a thing.
Go ahead. On that note, Craig, if you decide, because you're going to do the play by email coming up, right?
I'm trying.
If you decide to want to play test something or see how something works live, I'd be very interested to play a session.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so here's my thoughts.
Yes.
I think it's one thing I like about it a lot is that even though it's saying it's role-playing light, it's only one book.
Yep.
That's a big deal right now. There's expansions coming.
Right.
But unlike Dungeons and Dragons, someone's got to buy the Dungeon Master Guide. Someone's got to buy the players. Most of your players got to buy Player's Handbook.
Right.
It's a much bigger investment.
Yeah.
So this game, it's one book. What's the price going for nowadays, Craig?
It was
40
$40 when I bought it.
Yeah, I think it's still 40. I think I saw on their site today it's still 40. So it's a beautiful book, full color, and I would say if you're a brown coat, you already own it. Let's be honest. And if you're somehow a brown coat that doesn't already own this, it's 2+ with a reroll. I'm sorry, it is. It just is.
Yeah.
If you're not a brown coat, i.e. not a super fan of the show, but you enjoyed the show, you've seen it recently, or you just like sci-fi role-playing games, I think you'll enjoy this game. I'd say it's probably a 4+ with a reroll for anybody who likes to dabble in role-playing games. And then whether or not you're a hardcore role player or not is really going to depend if you like the lighter role-playing games or if you like the heavy mechanic-based role-playing games.
Yeah.
But you know who you are, so you're going to know this.
Right.
If you like the light role-playing games, this is an excellent one that really captures the Firefly universe. And my favorite thing about it really is how the ships are such an easy-to-use system for the ships, because I love sci-fi role-playing games. I've always liked them. I used to play Buck Rogers. I've played Traveler. I've played most of them. And this one, though, it makes ship combat so straightforward and simple that's really enjoyable. You don't have to break out a sheet. And I played games where when the ship combat happens, you got to get the ships out and little markers and move them around. And all that's kind of fun, but it also bogs way down. This can keep moving. And as Craig said, the plot keeps moving. The only thing that slows
the plot.
The only thing that slows this thing down is when the players start doing what players do best, which is totally ignoring the GM and just talking amongst themselves for 3 hours, which happens in every RPG. Let's be honest. But I really enjoy it. I think it's a great game. And if you know what Firefly is, just go buy this thing. You're gonna like it,
or at least look at it, because once you open it, once you crack it open, you're gonna get it.
And you read it, you're gonna like it.
One more question, Craig.
You okay?
The Cortex rule system that's coming out.
Yep.
Is that coming out in a book?
It is.
Yes.
In fact, they had limited copies at Gen Con. You'll hear Jamie talk about it in the interview. They were not final copies, but they wanted to have something to give out to fans at Gen Con, so they kind of did a rush copy, and they called it the pre-release copy. And they are now putting the real copy to print, and so it will be available soon, although they have a few of the pre-release copies left on their website.
So if you bought Serenity, would you want to buy this Cortex book or no? Because
I might want to check it out because they tweaked the rules a little bit.
I think also if you really like this system and wanted to apply it to other game universes. Let's say you love this system and you like vampires, but you just find White Wolf just a little too heavy for your gaming group and you want something a little lighter and faster. You could take the Cortex system and have a vampire game.
Exactly.
Okay.
By the way, I love White Wolf.
White Wolf is great.
I'm not trying to.
Actually, it used to be great. I don't know.
I haven't played it in a while, but
they've kind of corrupted
we
their whole
love
universe.
Vampire the Masquerade. So my wife's a huge Vampire fan. So I didn't mean to badmouth them. I'm just saying you could apply this Cortex thing in any way you like
to any genre.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
There you have it.
I got no Firefly sign off.
Can't stop the singing.
I'm Rafe, Hollywood Granger, and this is the Hollywood Minute, brought to you by Owen of Dry Guy Thiewool, who says, oh Lord, here we go. Elo pub u grimu sin grado ishu. Go through both Hollywood, Wedo nude a gweth, cartef, grai, dos pathu, simmereg. Dilok, a zero, in hito. Here's hoping HD has been paying attention in Welsh class, which clearly I haven't studied my lesson number 2. So the first comic to review today is, and cover your little one's ears if any one of those are listening. The first comic to review is Kick-Ass by Mark Millar. Mark Millar hails from Scotland and is a well-known comic writer. His current works that I am enjoying are Wolverine and Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass is a great different type of comic set for mature readers. It is set in modern times, not in the Marvel Universe, i.e. there are no superheroes. It starts out with a boy wondering if his calling is to be a superhero. He wonders this aloud one day with his schoolmates, and his friends all look at him and poo-poo the idea, as he does himself, as ridiculous, because no one, including he, has superpowers. Well, one night he decides to go for it, dresses up in a scuba outfit, brandishes a fighting baton, and goes out into the night seeking his adventure. His first fight is against some young graffiti vandals. Now, I'm going to stop there and not tell you the whole comic bit by bit. I'll let you read it yourself. But I am going to tell you what I like about this comic. There's a little bit of a mystery here. You begin to wonder, how is this going to work out? How is a kid in his adolescent years going to fight crime with absolutely no superpowers? There's also a nice thread of a story of a father and son relationship, as it appears the mother is deceased and the father is a widower. There's also some nice adult writing, which captures the viewpoints of what it's like to be an adolescent boy, and yet it's clearly set for mature audiences and is an interesting story to read. Also, which comes out in comic number 2, Kick-Ass goes out and fights a different gang of thugs and proceeds to get his butt kicked. He is then saved by a little 9-year-old girl who wreaks total havoc on the bad guys, ninja style, with 2 small katanas. This leaves you wondering, who is she? Where did she come from? Does she have superpowers? Are there other people with superpowers? And it starts to become a nice little mystery thread as well. So in sum, I'm very much enjoying this comic. It is a great read, and I highly recommend it. And again, look for all my recommended reads on our webpage at www.thd6generation.com. And if anybody has some great comic reads that they can suggest to me, please feel free to email me at hollywood@thd6generation.com. Well, that's my
story. Hey guys, I wanted to leave you a voicemail thanking you for producing such an entertaining and informative podcast. I'm stationed at Fort Huachuca in Arizona, where gaming and gamers are relatively rare, and besides your common WoW players, of which the Army has in ample supply, there are no other gamers really in the area, so I listen to your podcast a lot. I haven't been much of a MMORPG fan, but I do love Games Workshop hobbies, and after your review of Age of Reckoning, I decided to suck it up and drop $50 to try it out. I really love the game so far, although I probably don't play it as much as your average player. But it's been pretty cool. I appreciate the review. It's helped me get a fun game. I've been a gamer for about 13 years now, and I appreciate your coverage of gaming in general instead of focusing on one genre like other podcasts. Not to say that I don't listen to 40K Radio or Podhammer, but I honestly enjoy your podcast more. When you are going to get, when are you going to get some message boards that I can find so I can lurk around in other message boards? And one last thing, although I am single now, I do enjoy listening to the Gamer Wives. If there's one thing that will probably help socially challenged Star Wars fans out there, it'd probably be reconciliation tips that will help them avoid talking about elves and space marines on the first date, or dragging their new squeeze into a game store for 6 hours while scoring her with shock exposure to the hub of nerddom in their area. My ex-fiance eventually became used to my geeky habits and even played a board game or two with me on a regular basis because of the slow, patient, and limited way in which I exposed her to my hobbies. The wives have been on the money with every show so far, and it's fun to listen to a woman's views on the other side of the gamer dating fence. Thank you once again for continuing to make your awesome podcast. And I look forward to seeing Russ and Rafe on the Grimnir server. Keep an eye out for a high elf archmage named Isha. Yes, I'm playing a girl. Why? Because 1, elf women are pretty, and 2, so are elf males. Bye.
Thank you so much for the voicemail and the kind words. And more importantly, thank you for your service to our country. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to leave a voicemail to the D6 Generation, please head on over to www.thed6generation.com and check out the voicemail options on the right-hand side of the webpage. Who knows, we may even play it on the show. Up later on BBC Two, Torchwood. But first, words from Wales.
Oh yes, dwi yma o hyd. And here I am here too. My name is Owen, of course, and welcome one and all to this episode 2 of Words from Wales. Ha! Thank you ever so much for your kind feedback to the first issue. So here I am with the second, to talk about all things Welsh, to talk about gaming in Wales and how it compares to the United States, and maybe build a few bridges between my country and yours. So here I am. I will start off by talking about a few famous Welsh people, who you may not know are Welsh, for you are American and you know not of what goes on past your borders. So here I am, famous Welsh people, starting of course with Tom Jones. Oh, what a singer. It's not unusual to be loved by everyone. You know him, you know Tom. And talking of singers, we also have Shirley Bassey, Welsh through and through. Diamonds are forever, forever, forever. And then, on the Bond theme, we have the greatest Bond of all, Timothy Dalton, Welsh through and through. And then film stars John Rhys-Davies. You know John Rhys-Davies, who played a Scottish dwarf Gimli in The Lord of the Rings. And of course, Salah, the only Welsh Arab in the world in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Joe Calzaghe, super middleweight champion of the world, Italian name, Welsh through and through, who just beat Bernard Hopkins, or Bernard Hopkins as he would be known in Wales, over 12 grueling rounds in Las Vegas. Then you have Catherine Zeta-Jones, silly middle name, but from Mumbles down here. Yes, Mumbles, that's the name of the town, I didn't just mumble. Mumbles, not far from here. St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland and of course Guinness, born in the village of Banwen, Welsh through and through. And then Anthony Hopkins, Sir Anthony Hopkins, of course, famous for his role as Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs. Now, I don't like to name drop, but I once shared a dinner with Sir Anthony, a meal, if you like. And although he did say, famously, "I like a nice bit of liver washed down with Chianti, don't you think, Clarice?" I can tell you, honestly, that he doesn't like carrots. And he told the waitress as such in no uncertain terms. Anyway, last and probably least, we also have Ioan Gruffudd. Now, you in America might know Ioan from his role as Mr. Fantastic in the Fantastic Four, a film that was anything but fantastic, to be honest. So we'd best leave him there. So there you have it, some famous Welsh people. I hope you enjoyed that, and maybe I can tell you some more about them in the future. But here I will go on about gaming. Now, as you know, I've been lucky, very lucky in fact, to be able to game on both sides of the Atlantic, over here in Wales, and of course in the United States of America, where I have gamed at the Big Wah in Tennessee, and also the Alamo Grand Tournament in Texas, San Antonio, Texas to be exact. And what do I see as the difference? Well, it's all about the clubs from what I can tell. Now, I've heard Russ and Rafe and Craig talk about how they game in the Games Castle over with you, a gaming store where people would come and play their games. Now, I imagine the Games Castle as a large store in a suburban area where maybe it could take 20, 30 gamers on 5 or 6 different tables, all playing games to their heart's content. Games Workshop games, Privateer Press games, maybe some Fantasy Flight board games. And I envy that. You see, over here in Wales, and dare I say it, Britain, our game stores are nothing like that. And the gaming club is something that is the property of just Games Workshop stores, I fear, and as anyone knows, if you are over 16, you would rather game in Chernobyl than actually go to one of those places, I tell you that. But anyway, the game store in Britain is something which is totally different. For example, my game store, the Comics Shop in Swansea. Now, I am a comics fan, as is Hollywood, but they also sell games there. But it is not large enough to swing a cat. In fact, it's more like a telephone box. And not like Doctor Who's telephone box, the TARDIS, with relative dimensions in time and space. It is more like a small, grey, not very big telephone box that always smells slightly of wee. And nobody games in there. So therefore our gaming clubs tend to be groups gathering in church halls or above pubs to game on a certain night of the week. But the difference there, you see, is there is no accessibility. It's often intimidating for someone to come into these groups and game. Whereas in the Games Castle, for example, I'm sure anyone would be welcome to walk through the door, and therefore you always have new faces coming in and out. In the British Warhammer tournament scene, you see that the clubs are very tribal because they are just that, closed clubs where very rarely have new members playing each other. And even on large tournament scenes, you see the same faces and it becomes very competitive. Whereas in the States, I have found it to be very different. At the 2 tournaments I have been, there have been totally different faces, with only a couple of maybe die-hard players travelling from one to the other. Your clubs are based out of gaming stores, which is something that's totally alien to us, and we are quite jealous. Over here, one of the most celebrated clubs of all would be gaming stores, would be the Orc's Nest in London. Tiny place. Tiny place, and the monopoly that Games Workshop has over us here makes the D6 generation a godsend to us, for it tells us of so many games that we would not normally hear of. So there you have it, a difference. But since I am talking about my experience in tournaments in the US, I must give a shout out to some of my friends from SAGWA, that be the San Antonio Games Workshop Society, who were most generous when I went to game over there. And of course Leadership 2, one of the greatest Warhammer teams over there in the United States. Not a patch on us over here in Wales, but a good team nevertheless. And of course the Central Arkansas Wargame Society. Yes, and they blazon it on their t-shirts, CAWS or Caws. Now Caws is the Welsh word for cheese. So there you have it. CAWS, the Central Arkansas Wargame Society. Cheese. But there we have. So we have a great difference there in the way that we game to the way that you game. And that's why it's so fascinating for me to come over there and see the way you do it. Before I leave, I must, of course, thank those people who have emailed me with some comments or questions. First of all, Rick, who wanted the correct pronunciation for the Welsh name Merlin. Now, Merlin is, of course, Welsh through and through, as is King Arthur, but I could go on about that all the time. And the correct pronunciation for you, Rick, is Merddin, as in the town Caerfyrddin. Merddin. So there you have it. And Rachel, yes, thank you very much. And the answer to your question is, yes, I am married, but keep the photos coming anyway. So there you have it. There we have Words from Wales for another episode. I hope you enjoy it. But I would just like to give another great shout out to an inspiration here for podcasting. For what is great about podcasts is it brings us all together from all around the world. The new world, of course, the old world here, and even the penal colonies in Australia. Old penal colonies. And Jeff Carroll in particular. I must give a big shout out to Jeff. Because not only does he manage to get a podcast out every 2 weeks, a quality podcast at that, he manages to do it before lockdown every night. Well done, you. So there you have it. You can contact me, of course, at the usual avenues. Please feel free to email me any questions you have or anything you would like me to cover. So for now, from Wales, good night to you. No star. Bye.
When wives attack.
Hello, this is Karen, Craig's wife.
And this is Nicole, Russ's wife. And this week our shout out is from Lisden to the Old Timers Guild, the best guild ever. And a special shout out to all the ladies of OTG. I don't know what that is.
Nope, I have no idea.
I think somebody, Lisden or one of the Old Timers Guild or one of the ladies needs to tell me what what the ladies of OTG are. Okay, so this week we're going to talk a little bit about kids in gaming. Not so much like how to get your kid to play games, but just the perspective of bringing them in and how to sort of involve them from a family and even just if you have an event. But my sort of tack on it, we're going to take different slants, Karen and I, and mine is sort of getting your wife or your significant other to play by getting your kids to play. Because here's my thing. Like, there are some times when I don't feel like playing a game, believe it or not. There's occasions when I don't want to play. Russ could play a game like every day of the week, every hour of the day, and be totally happy. But Russ will buy a new game sometimes, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, do I want to play this? And then all it takes is he'll show, like if it's a kid-friendly game, he'll show it to Kit or show it to Rose, and they'll be like, Mommy, would you play a game with me? And I'm like, oh, crud. Like, there's no way out of that. When your little kid asks you to play a game and gives you those big little kid eyes, of course, you're a sucker. You're going to say yes. It could be the worst game in the world. I've played enough Candyland to prove that, but you'll just play a game, right? But there are games, and this is why I was thinking about it, there are games that are not like sort of cheesy Candyland games that are actually kind of fun.
I should take notes so I know.
Yes, you know, in a future reference. Yeah, save this episode if you don't have kids yet.
Or by the time we have kids, everyone's going to be done with their games, so I can just take
I can just give you all the hand-me-downs. There you go. I'll give you a big box.
Everyone else's kids will be graduating high school.
Most people hand down clothes. I'll be like, Karen, here's my games. The used games. That's funny. But because there's some games that Russ has brought home for the kids that I'm like, oh, I don't know. He's like, no, you're both going to like it. And I really like these games, too. And I thought, okay, so what if I was a wife who didn't play games and really didn't in general? If he got me to play one of these games with the kids.
We're so sneaky, aren't we?
I know, sneaky.
We're helping you guys.
We're helping you. We're giving you all these secrets. But it's like, if you did that, then she's going to sit down and play because she's going to feel guilty because she's getting those little kid eyes asking her to play a game. And then she might find out, hey, like, not all games are either cheesy or just really guy games, the real hardcore guy games, like, it's not 40K, it's not Candyland, it's somewhere in the middle. And that could sort of open her mind a little bit to the idea that, hey, there's a lot more out there than you might think, because there are. I mean, when you look online, that site Russ likes, Board Game Geek, I think it's called, and it's like, oh, I want to find a game, and there's like 5 bazillion games on that site, so there really is something for everyone.
What's funny is I think in general, like outside of the kids thing, that's very true. Like my dad, who I'm giving a shout out to this week, that's my shout out to my dad because he's become an avid listener. We've played games my whole life growing up, but they were always the party games. And when I met Craig and he met my father and they became friends, my dad loves to play games, and he had no idea that there were board games that weren't like Monopoly or Pictionary. Right. Like, he had no idea, and it opens up like this whole other thing that people just don't know about. Right. And I would think the same would be with kids.
Yeah, because you assume there's just
there's other categories.
Yeah, you assume that there's just like the games you find in your toy store, your big Mega Market toy store. You know about those, and then you know the dorky games your husband brings home. Yeah. The ones that you look at, and your average woman's gonna like be saying no way. Yeah. You don't know about the huge span of in between.
Right.
So I picked out a couple of things that. The games that we played with the kids. We got, what are they, 4.5 and 6, and they were really fun. And I think even if I wasn't a gamer wife, I would still like these games. Yeah. One of them was called Jungle Treasure, which was a really cute game. It was fun because it's a little game where you draw cards and you have to do things in a certain amount of time.
Looks like, it's funny because it looks like what I just described, where there's for adults, there's party games, and then the other board games look a certain way, like Carcassonne and stuff like that. Yeah. That looks like not like a kid's game, but from the others, like you can tell by the board. I'm just looking at the board right now.
Yes, I have the box in front of us.
You can tell that it's a different genre of game, but still a kid's game.
Yeah, yeah.
See, I had no idea this existed.
See, and this is a cool game, and this is German. It took me like 20 minutes to find the name of this game in English on the box. Yeah. But and we ordered this from Myriad Games, I believe, got this for us.
I can tell by this that if we had kids, Craig would love to play this with his son, because there's a big pirate skull. There's these different cards, and you have so long to do things. Yeah, there's a big skull. It's like a mask, and there's different colored jewels, and you have to pull out, like there's 2 green jewels and a yellow one. So that's what you have to do. And little thing where they have these little tiny, like 1-inch long by little wooden blocks, and they have to build different shapes depending on what the cards are. And there's just a minute timer or whatever, so that you can decide how quickly you can do it. And I would think, I keep interrupting you, but I would think, and I don't know if this is true, but it looks like if I had kids, games like this would be really good with like developmental critical thinking and stuff like that, as opposed to like Monopoly or Candyland.
Well, and it's with the little building blocks. I mean, these little building blocks, they're fun for adults, but they like teach the kids to do this. Like, my youngest was having a little more trouble building it, but man, was she concentrating to get this stuff built, and just pulling out the colors out of the bag and little manual dexterity. So from a kid's point of view, it's a really nice little game.
What's the age on this?
I think they say, what does it say in the box? I think it's I don't even know. Let's see, 6 to 99.
Yeah, you know why? Because it's an age gap where they're not 4 and 5, and they don't want to play Candyland anymore, but they're not 15 being able to play. That's really. I'm glad I didn't know this existed.
And this is like I said, this has 6, but my youngest is 4.5, and she played this no problem. And then there's the thing where you can sort of handicap it for your kids, like because there's this timer, and you run into the timer on a lot of games, and it's great if you're all grown-ups with presumably the same relative IQ. You can all handle the same thing. But with kids, this is awful, because Russ and I can do in this time 20 times what Rose and Kit can do. But we change it so that Russ and I each got one of these. Kit, the youngest one, got 3 times on the timer. And Rose, who's in the middle, she got 2. So we sort of made it. And the kids think it's fair, because they know that it's harder to do stuff when you're little. So that way everyone has a good time. It's not like if you're
not a certain age, or if there's a younger kid, forget it. She's never going to be able to handle the game. So this was a fun one. And like I said, this was
really
just a
good
fun
to know.
game.
And you didn't mind playing that.
I had fun with this. Yeah, I beat Russ. So,
That's what
I think Rose beat Russ too, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I beat Russ, so that was a good game. The other one, I think Russ may have talked about this. It's called Black Pirate, or The Black Pirate, I think. And this was a cool one because you had this little thing that you actually have little wooden ships with little fabric sails.
Oh, I was going to talk about that. Do they, excuse me, do they come in little packets or packages?
I don't think they come in packages.
Oh, all right.
It might be a different one.
Okay.
But then you have a board where you put little tokens that represent money on each little island, and it's this really cool board.
Oh my
and you
God,
use
I
this
totally
little
played that.
Did you? And it has this little blowy, this little tube
I
that
beat
you.
Craig, by the way, when I
Of
did
course you did. Of course you did.
He was. Oh, my microphone.
Karen's so excited she's knocking her microphone over. But it was
go
fun.
to the different islands.
Yeah,
like
and
the
you
different
try and
wells,
collect them. And then there's one bad pirate, the Black Pirate. And if you, I can't even remember exactly how it works, but if you end up bumping his ship or something, then you have to do it. The turns change, and the Black Pirate means you can, take someone else's booty. You can take out everything. So. But it was fun because you actually are using this little thing to blow the ships around the board, so you're kind of getting up and moving around to try to get the right angle. But it's really easy for little kids. And again, we did the same thing. When you have littler kids, it was like, okay, you got to ease up on that one. You get 4 turns to blow the little thing. Kit tries 3 times before she gets it to work. Okay, cut her some slack. She's 4.5. But for Russ and I was like, no, that counts. That's one. I don't care if you missed. I don't care if you bumped something.
And it's good because it teaches them how to play in rules.
Yeah,
like when they
did. They really would get really into it. It'd be like, no, Daddy, you had to. And for Russ, he's getting. It's like there's no slack cut to the father. That was the one thing. But it was a fun game, and it was good for kids, but it wasn't absolutely mind numbing for adults. So I thought that was just it was a neat way to show that there's a lot more out there, just to open our mind, like, okay, there's a lot out there. You can find games that you like.
See, I would never know that.
And then the last one, and everybody knows about this game already, but I just got the new one this weekend. We got Rock Band 2. Okay, my kids are like singing Rock Band songs like in the car, which is the funniest thing.
You came as the Rock Band people yesterday.
Yeah,
right?
The Halloween party was actually last night. Karen and I are recording differently from the other guys.
The podcast is pieced together.
But the Halloween party was last night, and we were our Rock Band characters. So I had my drumsticks with me. It was very fun. Put on way more makeup than I would ever wear in my entire year.
Well, it's Halloween.
But yeah, and that was fun. And even something like that, which is a game that's on a console game, it's on the Xbox, and you think of it as like, okay, it's a grown up game.
Is
like
it on
teenagers.
the Xbox? I didn't know that.
It's on Xbox and Wii and PS2.
Oh, okay.
All 3 of them.
I didn't know you could do that.
But what was neat about it, they actually, for those of you who have it already and your kids get mad because they fail out, there's a no-fail mode in the new one. So you can do whatever the heck you want to do and you don't die, which is great for kids.
Yes, because I played that with my niece, and we were all playing it and doing it fun and great, and she was trying to do it so hard
she
and
gets
couldn't
upset.
keep up. Yeah, and we felt bad, and everybody boos. And so
yeah, the crowd boos in the
every
game.
time it would start to boo, all us in the room would start clapping and cheering, so she wouldn't. We didn't want her to hear the boo.
That's funny. Well, this one is like they must have had enough people saying you got to have a way for little kids to play along. So it does still, the screen turns red when you're doing really bad, like your little track turns red.
That's
the track still turns red, but
you don't get the crowd reaction.
Yeah, the crowd doesn't react. The crowd. I don't know, but you never fail. Like you could miss every single note on that guitar. You could sing blah 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 on the microphone, and they still can. They still succeed, which is great. And that one, I kind of like that game just because. It's fun. It's a party game for adults. So little kids, it's just as much fun for them. And you can play that with your kids, and your kids have a great time.
I thought it was a kids' game, but all the adults like it.
No, I think Rock Band is more of a grown-up game.
Oh, okay. What's the first one? Guitar Hero?
Guitar Hero. That's a different one. It's not as cool. I think Rock Band's better.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
But
I thought they started out. My impression was that they started out as kids' games, and then everybody just loved them.
I've always thought of it as like a teenager plus or a 12-year-old plus. Like a little kid never could have handled that Guitar Hero guitar like a 5-year-old unless they were,
well, my nephew
Mozart
does
in training
and
or something.
He's 9. He
Yeah,
got it like 8, so
9,
it's like he's
a little bit older where he
yeah.
could handle it. But that was a great game for them to play because not only are we playing it as a family and we're having
and it's like
an
working
awesome
together,
time.
right? Rock
yeah,
band, like
you're all
doing
working
it
together, right? And we're cheering each other on, and we're like, "Good job!" And it's fun because we're all playing together. It's getting now. If your wife didn't play console games, she's probably going to have fun, even if she just sings. Yeah, like Karen. Even Karen. Russ wants.
I'm like, what's a console?
Russ so wants to get you to play.
I
Do you
know.
think Karen will play this for just a few minutes tonight
me.
before she goes? I'm like, we can talk. But it gets her to play it, and it's a fun game with the kids.
He wrote to me on chat. We were talking one day about the podcast, and he goes, Karen, when you come over, I'm going to have you play Rock Band for like 10 minutes. And I just wrote back, Why?
Because Russ needs to like take over the world with Rock Band. He loves this game so much. It's so much fun. He wants to have a party and have everyone come over.
That's what he said.
And you guys don't play Rock Band, so he's trying to convert you. Yeah. It's like him knocking on your door with a pamphlet. Come play Rock Band, please. So that one's great because it's not only is it getting you to play together, it could be introducing you to the fact that there are things you can play on the Xbox or a Wii or a PS2 or PS3, that you really like, but your kids are playing it too, and it's kind of fun to have your kids playing music. I mean, Rose and Kid are really into music. Now, there's every variation of, there's like stuff that's like Nine Inch Nails stuff on there, and then there's like really innocent, fun, poppy songs on there. So you can pick whatever you want for songs. But like my kids are in the back of the car and like Living on a Prayer is on.
Oh, nice.
And Rose and Kid are like belting it out in the back of the car. They're little like singing away. I'm like, that's kind of fun. The kids are getting into music, and I just think
they don't miss
nice.
Bon Jovi. They'll know now Bon Jovi.
They now know Bon Jovi, which I think is cool from the 80s, and they're like, oh God, my mom has me singing Bon Jovi, But yeah, so my thing was, if you pick some of those games that are sort of in between, that aren't the standard really boring kid games that you play over and over, and they're just mind numbing. Once they learn colors and shapes and numbers,
it's good to know that that's out there, because I really didn't know that
there really is a lot. And so those were my things, and that was my way to get your girl into gaming, is you can sidestep it by getting the kids into it. And if the kids look at her with those eyes, I'm telling you, I've played enough times the boring kid games to tell you that it's hard to say no to them when they ask you. So if they look at you with those puppy dog eyes and say, please, mommy, play this game, she's probably going to play.
What's funny on the podcast, like what I'm thinking now is we're giving the guys like how to kind of sneak your way into getting your girl to play games. Don't forget, guys out there, this is how we get you to do stuff too.
Oh yeah, we're just now telling you how we do that part we're keeping to ourselves, because women are a lot more vicious than men. They come after us.
I was just thinking that.
This is how we get you to do things all the time. The back door.
Okay, my experience is a little bit different because Craig and I don't have kids, but our families are filled with kids. We have 6 nieces and nephews between the two of them, like on each. We have 4 on my side and 2 on his side. So who we're constantly with for holidays, and I thought of a couple of things. One, which I'll talk about in a second, which is when you don't have kids and you're playing adult games and there's kids in the room because they're not ours, how to sort of involve them in the games and keep them occupied even though they're not playing. The other thing is, Craig mentioned, I forgot that I do this, but on Easter, and this is a little shout out to Super Nanny, on Easter, there's a time in my house between dinner and between looking for baskets and dinner. That's like a hangout time, and the kids get nutty from the chocolate and they're waiting for dinner. And I bring these games, and I can only remember 2 of them that I've done, and they're really simple, and they're like in your house, you don't need to do anything. And this one was on Super Nanny because it's great to use at a restaurant when you're waiting for your food and your kids are
going crazy.
There's not
playing
that much
with the salt
to
and pepper.
Is to take like 5 items on the table, either on the table at a restaurant, or I brought 5 items. I had like a brush, a camera, a sock, whatever. Mm-hmm. So you have like 5 items, and the kids look, and our kids range for our nieces and nephews that I play this with range from 3 to 9. So they all, you have a few seconds to, look at the items, and you go over them, this is a clock and it's the blue clock or whatever. And then they all close their eyes and you take one item away.
Yeah.
And then when they open their eyes, they have to look at the items and try and figure out what's missing. And for younger kids, it's really good. It's really hard. And they're like looking, and they're like, oh, and they got to think, and that was there, and you move them around.
Rose just was telling me she did this. She's in 1st grade, and she did this at school where they had Halloween things hanging on the blackboard on strings, and then they took a thing away, and the kids had to figure out which one it was. That was all she told me about from school on Friday. That was so much fun for her. That was what stuck in her head.
And now sometimes when I'm there, they'll be like, let's play the takeaway game. And of course, also the same thing is with their ages. If there's someone who's older, you can put more items out. Say you put 8 or 9 items and take 2 or 3 away.
Right. So change it so it's not overwhelming for the little ones.
Right. And then with the real little ones, you take one away and give hints or whatever. But they each take a turn, and they love it, and they talk about it all the time. The other one we did that was a big hit was I just got some paper, and we did animals where I'd put like elephant and I would tape it. Say my niece Brooke, I'd tape it on her back where she couldn't see it.
Right.
And then she has to ask questions and try and figure out what animal she is. Like,
oh, that's cool.
And it's crazy to see how smart they are because she'll be like, do I have gills? You know what I mean?
To
like,
figure out if she's a fish.
Yeah.
Very cool.
You know, do I have webbed feet or, and
right.
do I eat, what do I eat? And they have to be yes or no questions. And, again, for the older kids, they're harder.
Make it more complicated,
And because the adults are around, if it's more complicated, the adults can help or, whatever. And
right.
they loved that. I found out that after I left Easter, they were still playing. They played for like another 45
still
minutes.
Playing
they
that game.
loved the game. And then they actually were like, Daddy, why don't you put on all the adults?
You could make that a game for adults and kids too. If you put you could put things on, because we did that last night. But we could do that. You could put elephant on the 5-year-old and put I don't know, some other person on the whatever you wanted to do on the back of an adult that was tougher for us to guess.
So I got those. Those are from Super Nanny. Every once in a while she has those good games. But the other thing that happens to us is you all know that Craig and I go to Maine every year, and what happens in Maine is Craig, myself, and my father end up playing games all week, and the kids want to play, and they're not kids' games. So we figured out a couple of things. We found out that the game I've mentioned here, Sequence.
Yes.
Kids can play that.
Cool.
Because have you played Sequence?
I have played it, but not in a while.
Oh, okay. Because if you think about it, it's bingo. Mm-hmm. With a 52-card deck. So when they turn over the 8 of diamonds, they're looking for their 8 of diamonds, and all kids know how to play bingo.
Right.
They may need a little bit of help, but my 8 and 9-year-old, my niece and nephew, were off playing by themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And it may take them forever to get a bingo because, they don't critically
slower,
think, thinking ahead. They kind of go with his 8 of diamonds
but
and put it
still
and
a good
hope for
thing,
a
though,
bingo.
because it will eventually make them think that way.
Exactly. And the other one that my niece, it was crazy that she was good at, and my nephew, who's 9, is the Blocus game.
Yeah.
Because it shapes them. I mean, and obviously they're not fantastic at it,
right.
But it is a way to, let one play, or if we're playing it, another, this is a good tip too, is if we're playing, say, Betrayal or Carcassonne or some bigger game they can't play, we give them Sequence or Blocus, and they think they're playing like an adult game next to the adults.
So they don't feel left out. Kids love to think they're doing what the grown-ups are doing, and sometimes they can't tell the difference.
Right, and those are 2 games that they have fun doing. They don't really care who's winning, but they're actually able to do the moves, so they were happy. The other one is with Carcassonne this summer. We let
Karen's
the
favorite game in the universe. I think we may challenge her to go through a whole podcast without mentioning that game. I don't think she can do it.
But we let the little kids, my niece who's 8, and then my smaller niece who I think is she's gonna be 5 now. 5 or 6. Turn the cards over for us, keep score for us, move the pegs around.
Right. Any of those little things will let the kids feel like that they don't. It doesn't have to be something that you even need a human being to do other than yourself. But if you give them the job, they feel like they're playing.
If you're playing, another great thing is I forget the name of the game. I forget. Oh, Buzzword. We played Buzzword, which is you kind of read off a card almost like trivia.
Right.
And again, my 8-year-old Brooke, who likes to hang around us, has, she's in 2nd grade. So letting her read the cards, oh my God, she thought she had won the lottery.
Yeah.
And we all played because we were still answering the questions, and she got to sit there and read the cards, and she sat with us all day, and everybody else came home. They were like, oh, we're going to miniature golf. And she's like, oh, no, I'm going to stay here. And she just sat there and read the questions and was so excited.
Which is really good for kids to sit there reading. Well, and I'm really going to interrupt while you're talking about that, is getting her to read is one of the kind of cool thing about, aside from gaming, to involve the kids when there's a bunch of adults in the room so you guys can kind of all play together, or to, get your wife into gaming through your kids, that kind of thing. You just think about it, a lot of people don't appreciate games just because they don't get exposed to them.
Yeah.
It's a lot of cool stuff out there. It's a really fun way to pass the time. You meet a really neat group of people. People we met just from gaming, the people that we've met and chat with through the podcast. It opens up this whole new world. So if you're doing that for your kids, or the kids that you know when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they're going to start to develop an appreciation for games in general. So they're more likely to take that as they become an adult. And I just think that's a neat thing. I think it's neat to sort of foster that.
There's some kids who would love to play it and didn't know that that was out there, and we're showing them. The one other thing I'll mention is Pictionary, because I love that game. Depending on the age. Now, my niece Brooke, again, we played a girl game of Pictionary, me and my cousins, and she wanted to play. Well, what we did was every time we pulled a card that she would know, like, son or see, we let her be the
Right.
person. And so she was playing the whole thing, and she was so proud of herself
they
that
love
the
that.
adults were playing. So that's another way to get them into Pictionary. So those are my tips on and last night this is just such a something that happens with me and my husband all the time, is at the Halloween party we were going to play one more game.
You were?
And I said, I don't know if you were there. And
I left a little
said,
early, yeah.
I want to do the Pictionary thing. I had an easel and I
He
had
did
everything.
not cut Pictionary down again.
Well, we didn't know if we were going to play it, so I said, I'm going to do the Pictionary thing, and he said, I want to play the werewolf game, of course.
Oh, which looked really cool. I wanted to play that.
So he went around and said, werewolf or Pictionary to every single person, took a tally, and I lost again.
I'm sure it wasn't really like that, knowing Craig. It was probably like, hey, you guys want to play this really cool game
Exact-
called Werewolf,
that's
or
it.
you want to play
No.
Pictionary?
He was like, werewolf, and I said to them, oh, everyone's picking werewolf, and they said, well, you get to kill people. And I'm like, well, did anyone
see?
explain Pictionary?
The
or?
theater teacher was a little dramatic in his presentation of Werewolf. I'm sure that came off way cooler.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up with emails.
Yes, we have a couple of emails. You have those in front of you, Karen.
I do.
Shoot.
Ray emailed us about he bought Cutthroat Cavern for his lady, giving it to her on her birthday, and he's taking our advice to learn how to play the game before he gives it to her. So on her birthday, when they play it,
he will know.
He will know, and so we're going to see how that goes.
Yeah, we told him to email back and let us know if it works.
And Nathan wrote a very funny email about his girlfriend breaking on accident his guys and how to deal with that.
Yeah, and I think I responded back something to the effect of, well, I'm sure it was an accident, because if she wanted to break them, see, here's my theory, Nathan, if she really meant to, it wouldn't have just been one, a Chaos Dragon who lost his head. The entire Chaos Army would have accidentally been flipped over on the floor and trampled on or something.
And she did buy him lunch or something.
Yeah,
to apologize
so there
for.
was a little like, oops, sorry, I broke your toy, honey.
Yeah,
So.
and I emailed him back because I don't know if Craig's ever mentioned, but I am the queen of breaking things. I break everything. I lose everything that's not mine. He's learned to live with it. He had to. It's the way that it is. But last night, again, you and Russ were looking at those. He painted the figures of me, the guys of me, or whatever you call them, the
little miniatures, little metal miniatures of
and
Karen.
I showed you one, and then I had to show you the other one. I'm like, well, this
Picks
one's
it up,
broken.
it goes toppling across the fireplace.
Because it's been broken ever since he made it. We spent all that time, and it's broken right off.
Okay, are we ready to do the last thing we want to talk about? Because we have an issue.
I think Adam.
We have an issue with a listener. Adam, are you listening, Adam? Turn
Although
up the volume.
we appreciate him listening and donating, but
we appreciate. Yes, there was an issue. You see, we once again won, and we did. I'm going to clarify
Won
this.
the
We
auction.
once again won the auction this week. Yes, but Adam won another auction. I don't even know which segment he won, but he won another one.
I think it was one of Craig's. I think it might have been Rapid Fire.
Rapid Fire. So he decided he didn't want the wives to win, so he just sent in a little extra to beat us.
He hit
I
the
sent him-
donate button. He
hit the
donated
donate
to the
button. So
website.
he gave the extra, and he's like, well, that's so that your auctions beat one of the wives.
Yeah, which
you know
really
what?
wouldn't be
you
the
know
same
what?
thing.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count. As Karen says, it just doesn't count. Really, from our point of view, and being the wives, our point of view is the right point of view. That's really like a $3 donation on behalf of the wives. So thanks for that,
Yes.
Adam, because you made us beat them even more. Because without us, they wouldn't have gotten that $3.
Yeah,
so still us.
if our bidding wasn't so high, you wouldn't have had to give that
Yes,
extra
so
money.
we
got
so
even more.
totally just get credit for that one too. So thanks, Adam.
But it was a nice try.
It was a nice try. Yeah, we appreciate the $3. You know.
and the rule is when the auction ends, whoever has the highest bid wins, and that is us. So.
Right, and that was us.
All right,
There's no way around that. So
we will see you next week.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye-bye.
one.
And we're back. We're really excited tonight. We've got a very special interview.
Very special.
Very special. We have an
I feel
interview.
special.
You should. And indeed you are. We have on the phone, we have Jamie Chambers, game designer and vice president of Margaret Weis Productions, and more important to me, the writer and game designer for Serenity role-playing game, a personal favorite of mine. Let me run down. Now, I'm assuming you're not the Jamie Chambers that is a reporter in Los Angeles.
I'm afraid not so much.
No, I found like 4 or 5 Jamie Chambers online trying to come up with some stuff for the interview, and very little on the actual man.
He's a mystery.
You have a background in the CIA or any chance?
Well, a couple cover identities never hurt anybody.
Yeah, that's very true. A little cutouts here and there. I found a lot of stuff on Sovereign Press, which I believe is connected somehow with Margaret Weis Productions, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that was our original company. That,
okay.
The very first role-playing game focused company that Margaret started back in the late 90s.
Excellent.
And I was, I'm one of the few people I ever have known in my life. Actually, when I was finishing up college, I interned my senior year for Sovereign Press.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right in there, right
here. We'll go ahead.
Right in the ground floor.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the time, Sovereign Press was doing the Sovereign Stone role-playing game, which is one of the reasons it got the name. And it was run by Don Perrin. It had and Tony Lee was the head editor and game designer working for him at the time. And there was a few different people involved. And I was just kind of a playtester and a volunteer, and kind of there was an opportunity for me to do something more. And I kind of conned the dean of my college into letting me intern for the game company.
That's
he went for it, and
credit.
it was awesome. Margaret flew me up to Wisconsin. She lives in a town called Williams Bay, and I stayed at her place, and we worked on the Sovereign Stone role-playing game core book. That was sort of how I finished the internship. I did some of it just by email, phone, and that sort of thing, but actually did some physical work on site up in Margaret's place, which is nicknamed the Barn.
Yeah. Is it in fact a barn?
It is. It was actually a Victorian barn, I guess. It's about a 150-year-old building that got refurbished and turned into a house. It's actually a really cool place.
Wow. And
So
you
it
get
was
college
a huge
credit?
geeking moment there to stay there, and Margaret's over there writing her latest Dragonlance novel, and I was working on the Sovereign Stone book.
Now, was that at all intimidating to you? Because I have to say that at Gen Con, I was meeting all these big wigs and all these game designers, and I was going like gangbusters. And there was Margaret Weis sitting there signing autographs, looking all nice and approachable, and I panicked and ran in the other direction.
Well, I had already known Margaret for close to 5 years by that point.
Oh,
And we had been friends, which is why I got that opportunity. And
Really?
so by that point, it wasn't intimidating. It was very cool because while I'd already visited her place by then, and we had been friends for a while, but it was kind of the first time I got to stick around and see how she worked on a day-to-day basis and really get a sense of how she did things, how she went about her normal day, when she did her writing, what her habits were, and it was kind of cool because she was somebody I really admired. And,
absolutely.
That's really
when you sort of see her work ethic, I mean, that's sort of the first thing she does. She gets her day started, and then she starts writing, and and she gets in however many words she's doing, usually by lunchtime.
Now, how did you meet her?
My sort of story and how I first got involved with the game industry and Margaret
Great
goes back
story. It's a great place
story.
to start.
It actually goes back to the end of high school, and I graduated from a high school in North Georgia in 1993. And back then, there wasn't really an internet. There just was online services. So there was America Online, CompuServe, and Genie, which was done by General Electric. And Genie was basically a text-only, almost like a national bulletin board service.
Yep. Right.
It was, we had the maximum speed you could get was 2,400 baud.
I was going to say, were you over 1,200 by that point?
I was 2,400.
Well, you were rocking it.
And I was blazing fast, and I was right there the very first day they upgraded to 9,600, and I was like, oh my God, my head spun how fast it was. But the reason I chose Genie as one of these as my first online thing was I saw in Dragon Magazine that was where TSR, a company that produced Dungeons and Dragons, had their home, their online home. And I had already started corresponding with the editor of Dungeon Magazine back then. Her name was Barb Young, and she kind of said, if you want to kind of get on board with us, as a young guy, this would be the place to go. So I got a Genie account, and I started hanging out and playing games at what they called the TSR Roundtable. And it didn't take long for them to say, hey, we can get this kid to do some work for free.
Brilliant.
So for about a year and a half, 2 years, I was two different things going on. One, I was elected the president of the very first online-only gaming club for the Role-Playing Game Association, the RPGA.
Wow. Yeah.
So America Online immediately got one. Ours was called LAMP, the Legendary Association of Modem Players.
I like the acronym.
Yes, and we had Arabian motif going. I was the
nice.
Caliph, and then we had there's a whole thing going on there. And we had a cool ASCII art, like Aladdin's lamp thing as our logo. Was
and it tied with the whole Genie service too. That was very clever.
That was all. Yeah, we had this whole thing going on, and it was So actually, another guy I worked with in the club called Jay Fisher. He still runs what was our sister club at the time called the Universe Construction Club, the UCC. It's actually still going to this day.
Wow.
But I haven't had anything to do with LAMP in a long time. But at the same time, I was doing that and involved in the RPG. I was actually Dave Gross, who was the editor of Polyhedron way back then. He was involved with the RPGA, so I actually worked on the development of the Living Jungle, Living Campaign, and Living Death. And Living Death was going on at least up until a couple years ago, through every different version of D&D since then.
Yep.
So I was involved in that, and then they made me a staff member of the Roundtable, which meant as long as I hung around that one parted genie, I didn't get the hourly access fees that could accumulate back then.
Yeah, nice. Hey, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, it was $3 an hour after your initial however many hours you got for the monthly subscription. Right. And like my first month, I ran up a $300 bill.
Oh yeah, it was crazy.
I was an 18-year-old kid, so in the 90s. So there you go. But trying to get back on track.
Yep.
So that was my thing. They made me a staff member, which meant I was an indentured servant. I got to run games. I got to host chats, and that was sort of where I first got to, quote unquote, meet people from the game industry. They're like, we have these chats every Tuesday night. You moderate them, and there'll be a game designer or an author or somebody that will come on board, and you can host Q&A sessions with anybody who shows up and handle it like that.
It's like the beginning of the new media. Way back then in '93.
Yeah, I was on the ground floor. What can I say?
There you go.
So, that's how I first got to know a lot of these guys. I mean, Ed Greenwood, Colin McComb, Rich Baker. There was just all these guys, and I got to be on the ground floor. Some really cool things that were going on at TSR at the time. I was a playtester for the Birthright campaign setting. I got to see the Saga role-playing game rules before it ever got tied to Dragonlance.
Wow.
And it was a kind of cool, interesting time. And anyway, one night, it was, my guests were Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, who just happened to be my favorite authors.
I think they were a lot of our favorite authors.
That's right.
Yeah, and that was actually early in 1994. I was 19 years old, and then about 2 months later, I met up with them both at DragonCon.
There you go.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, and that was pretty much it. There were new things going on with them. Margaret and Tracy were working on a novel series, and they wanted to do other stuff for a series called Starshield.
Yep.
And Tracy was looking for people to be involved, and I stepped up and whatever I can do, I want to be there. And then everything that went on after that, it was the same thing. We're going to do this series called Sovereign Son. I'm like, really? Any way I can help? And I just kind of, volunteered my way to.
Yeah, it's great.
Into a
job. To the point where they started paying me.
Nice.
I noticed that you also did a lot of work. Well, not a lot, but some work with White Wolf.
Actually, apparently there is another Jamie Chambers.
Oh, you're kidding!
I have never written or
what
edited
about Wizards of the Coast? No.
Wizards of the Coast, yes.
Oh, because they had a crossover at one point with some Dragonlance, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually, when the Dragonlance campaign setting was done for 3rd edition, we actually wrote that. It was the same Sovereign Press staff that we had. It was me and Christopher Coyle and some of the other people we were working with, and we did that, but it was sort of like, it was kind of like work for hire that we built into our contract.
So you seconded to Wizards of the Coast when they got the licenses?
Yeah, well, when Sovereign Press got the license, our team wrote that first book, and then we immediately went into the Age of Mortals book, which is the first one that we published ourselves.
Oh, right.
But it was always part of the deal because Wizard of the Coast wanted to be able to publish the core book for Dragonlance, and then we would get to do all the follow-up for the next couple of years.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, just in case anybody out there living under a rock or anything, the whole Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, we keep bringing it up, and we did mention a couple times Dragonlance. Most of you out there should probably be somewhat familiar with Dragonlance, where many of us, if we didn't start our fantasy reading with Dragonlance, it was definitely right there at the beginning of our reading lists. And
it definitely was for me.
And you, as far as the role-playing environment and the rules go, it just keeps popping up over and over and over again in your resume. Was that until recently? Was that one of the primary projects you were constantly working on?
Well, yeah. Well, yes and no.
Oh.
I mean, I became a fan of Dragonlance, when I was 10 years old. In 5th grade, my dad got me the original Dragonlance novel, Dragons of Autumn Twilight. And the next year, I'd already been playing D&D, since I was 7 with some older kids. I started running my very first campaign I ever ran as a DM was Dragonlance, starting with DL1.
There you go.
So it's like it was, one of these really cool things that I got to know my favorite authors, and I actually got to work on the world that was my very first, fantasy role-playing game setting.
Now, I couldn't find a lot about the Sovereign Stone system. Tell us a little bit about how that developed and what sort of set that apart from other role-playing games when it first came up.
Well, Sovereign Stone was, the original idea was there was going to be a trilogy of novels by Margaret and Tracy, and it was actually based on a story and artwork that was created by Larry Elmore, the artist who they had worked with on so many books and game products before, but this was Larry's idea. He had a whole world and a basic storyline, and Margaret and Tracy were going to write these novels to go with it. And they also wanted to do game stuff. Now, the thing with that was this was before the days of the open game license, so you couldn't just say how, we're going to do a D&D based thing.
Yeah.
So they decided, obviously they're going to need to do their own game system. And so Lester Smith, who is known for doing a lot of other games, including Dark Conspiracy, he designed the Dragon Dice collectible dice game that TSR published in its final years. Lester came up with the core mechanics of the Sovereign Stone role-playing game, and then Don Perrin worked with him to develop the book, and then the whole team of us were involved. I wrote a chunk of the core book and did most of the creature stat work and write-ups along with the rest of the team on that. And the idea, the basic idea that was mechanics that were very intuitive, fast, and yet you still got to roll lots of dice. It was really kind of a basic thing, and this will all tie in so beautifully in just a few moments with things we're doing that are more current.
I was going to say, does that sort of become the foundation of how you design all your future RPGs? Is that
yes, well, that's the thing. People who've really been around a while will notice a very huge similarity from the original Sovereign Stone set of rules and the Serenity role-playing game, and all the way up until the Cortex system. The modern incarnation of that rule set, and that's not an accident. I mean, really is.
So you've built upon that foundation and just sort of tweaked it, improved it, and refined it.
Right.
Yeah. Now, talking about Serenity, how did you get involved in that project? Were you sort of there when they first got the IP, or did you guys go to?
Who went after who? Who approached who?
That was me.
So you're a Broncoat?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Totally. Good man. Okay.
And in fact, well, that was one of those things. I had my sister had gotten me into watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the end of its very first season, and I thought she was crazy. I'm like, why the hell would you want me to watch this TV show based on that stupid movie?
Right? Yep.
But my sister bugged me over and over again and said, no, you would really like this. You have to give it a shot. And she was right, and I became a Joss Whedon fan. And for a long time, I've been kind of an entertainment news junkie. So I heard that he was developing a sci-fi series for Fox. So I actually was reading, casting notes and summaries of what the pilot was going to be about, and getting an idea that it was going to be a kind of a space western. So I was following Firefly before it was even called Firefly.
Wow.
Awesome.
And
you
then
are just Mr.
at
Ground
Dragon
Floor.
Con that year, we actually I was roaming around, and this is one of those things I feel bad about because I'm in publishing. I am a huge supporter of creators enforcing their copyrights and not supporting anybody who violates that.
Yeah.
But I saw at the bootleg video table there was the unaired pilot of Firefly before Firefly ever came on the air.
Oh, and he couldn't resist.
I don't think anybody can blame you.
I plugged down that $25 so fast you couldn't even imagine.
Nice.
And what that was this was the rough cut version of the pilot. It had no music. It had no special effects. It hadn't been cut together very well. You could still see the boom mics sometimes, dipping into frame. you could see the guys, in their space suits. The wires, hadn't been removed yet, so it was very crude, and it didn't matter. It still was just, you could tell how good this was going to be, and you really got a sense of the characters and the story. And so me and Margaret and our kind of inner circle, we all get to see the pilot before the first episode, which is, put us ahead of the curve for just about everybody else. Because when Firefly came on, Fox decided not to do the pilot first. They started with the second episode.
Yeah.
So it was like we kind of were on board. We'd already seen the pilot, and we knew who these people were and what was going on right away.
Right.
So we watched each and every week, and we literally would have. Sometimes we even call each other like right after the episode and
Did
talk
you see
about
that cool scene?
Yeah.
Now, how many times have you seen Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog?
Ridiculous number of times.
That's right. Of course,
not only I stayed up till midnight, which was midnight Pacific time, which was for me even later, to see those when they went live on Hulu.com.
Yeah, that was
and then I downloaded them to my Apple TV so we could watch them the next day at lunch.
There you go.
So yeah, we're pretty hardcore. And then at Comic-Con, I was with the California Browncoats, and they were hosting Felicia Day in their booth, and Nathan Fillion did a signing there as well. So we're big Dr. Horrible supporters here too.
Excellent.
This is unsolicited testimonial going out there, folks, for Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. Check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, watch it. Go to drhorrible.com or check it out on iTunes.
You can't miss it. It's everywhere.
So Serenity. So you were the one.
Yeah. Okay. Going back to Firefly, we all watched it. We were huge fans, and at the time, we had we were publishing. We were still published. Toward the end of doing Sovereign Stone, we were doing Dragonlance, and that was going really well. And we were just watching it. We were just fans of a TV show. And then, like everybody else, we had our hearts broken when Fox canceled it.
Oh,
it was a nightmare.
And I was part of the online fan community. I was friends with some of these people. We, there was a whole thing to put up an ad in Variety magazine.
Yep.
And we threw some money at that, and we did there was print out a postcard and send to the studio. We all print out postcards, wrote our own notes on it, mailed it out to the studio. We were part of that fan.
Oh, nice.
Outcry, and it really just killed us that this show didn't get the chance that it deserved.
Yeah.
So you're part of the reason they made the movie.
Well, I'd like to think we're
that was the
a little
Brown
part of it.
All the way.
But yeah, that's part of it. So I was totally plugged into the fan community, and then when the first little rumblings came out that Universal Studios was going to do a Firefly movie, it occurred to me, it was like, why don't we see if we could do something, a game product related to this? We're already doing a license with Wizards of the Coast for Dragonlance. Why can't we do a license for this?
Yeah.
And one of the things that Margaret and I have to our advantage that helps us more than some other game companies is that we actually have an agent who represents us. Margaret's literary agent, she actually represents me for my writing as well. And she has contacts and, all the major New York publishers, all of the studios in Hollywood for TV and movies.
Yep.
So we had kind of an in and somebody who actually had the right numbers in her Rolodex that other people didn't have.
Oh, yeah.
And it gave us sort of a legitimacy that other companies might not have as well.
Wow.
So it was like it was one of our little secret weapons that I guess is not so much a secret anymore. But we were able to talk to the right people, because literally getting your foot in the door is the hardest thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, who did you have to talk to? Was that Universal that you had to go to?
That was Universal, and that was a really weird question because Fox had Firefly the TV show, Universal had Serenity the movie. And that not only affected what our deal was and with who, but also what we're allowed to do.
Right.
So we really didn't know. We found out that there were 3 other companies competing for the license, but they really seemed to like what we had to say, and were really just looking for an excuse to work with us. Nice. I think Margaret's name was a huge part of it, and I think the way I wrote the pitch was the other.
Uh-huh.
Because, it's like I really, I knew the material. I was a huge fan. And while I'm a business person and I can write, a business plan and say what I want to do, I was also able to really demonstrate, that I loved Firefly and was ready to do something that the fans would relate to.
So this is a labor of love, and
Yeah.
this wasn't just another RPG for
And
you.
you
This
can't
is like-
you can't
absolutely.
fake
This
that
was-
either.
Right.
Yeah.
Both Dragonlance and Serenity were huge things I did. In fact, nothing we've really done has just been, hey, this is cool, let's do it and make money. Every product that we've done has been because we were fans first, and we wanted to make something that we loved.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I think it definitely shows in your products. that's for sure.
Absolutely. Now, what position did you have in the company when you're doing? Were you already vice president when you were working
Yes.
at this?
I was already vice president by that point, and it was one. I mean, there was a couple of motivations. One, obviously, was like, this would be the coolest thing ever if we got this.
Yeah.
But another was that we were literally at that point we had already we had converted Sovereign Sun to D20, but when D&D 3.5 came out, it killed a lot of companies' D20 lines. So Sovereign Sun wasn't doing well enough to continue, so we kind of let it retire, and then we let another company take over that license. So we were literally the Dragonlance company. And while we were doing pretty well with Dragonlance, I also knew that that was a license, and it wasn't going to last forever.
Right.
And keeping your eggs all in one basket is a pretty risky thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. So that's
and you got a genre jump too here, going from fantasy to sci-fi.
It was, from high fantasy to sci-fi western.
Yeah.
And then there was the other thing. It was like the question, do we keep doing D&D based stuff? Do we just, do D20 modern slapped on a sci-fi paint job and,
right.
and just do that? Or do we want to do something that we own completely? So I pitched the idea that we kind of take the old Sovereign Sun game system, which was intellectual property that we owned, and let me tinker with it a little bit.
Sure.
So what I did is I took Lester Smith's original game mechanic, stripped it down to its basic roots, and rebuilt it as more of a storytelling and character-based game, whereas the other one was a lot more D&D with different rules in its approach.
Yeah.
So let's get into Serenity, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Look, Serenity must have been sort of a dream project, because looking at the title page, you're the writer and designer. You also did the layout and the typesetting, so you basically got a chance to choose what it was all going to look like. Margaret Weis is in there writing the fiction. Your wife Renee is doing the art direction. You even have some stuff from Tracy Hickman in there. It's like the gang's all here.
Oh, it was. Well, that was the thing. We couldn't even possibly use all of the people who really wanted to be a part
So
of it.
everyone was just clamoring, going, "We want to be part of Firefly, right? We want to be." Part
And
of
just so you know, my wife has been eavesdropping this whole time, so she just heard her name get dropped. She is tickled pink. She's very proud of the work.
Oh, I'm
she did
sure. Well, I mean, later on we'll be talking about it, and I just think that just starting with the look of the book is so amazing, and captures
Yeah, absolutely. One of the visually, I mean, I once again, because I was part of the fan community, there was an artist who had done all these guerrilla marketing posters that people were supposed to print out and hang all over the world just so people would buy the Firefly DVDs and spread the word about the movie. And her code name online was 11th Hour. And her real name is Susan Toom. And I just emailed her on a whim saying, hey, we're kind of doing this thing. Would you be interested in helping? And so that led to her. Now, the entire physical look of the book really is owed to her.
Wow.
She did the cover art, and she did the background plates that you see on every page. She did the splash graphics for every chapter.
Who made the call on writing it sort of in verse speak, for lack of a better term? Like, I think that was brilliant.
That would be me as well.
That was awesome. No, seriously, it made the
so
flavor.
Captures the feeling of it is just amazing.
I mean, any browncoat with assault's got to own this book. Even if you don't play RPGs, it's so full of the.
And it's almost written from that perspective, sort of like, we know you like Firefly and Serenity, but here, check out role playing as well.
Right.
And,
and that's. I mean, I'd love to say that was just a brilliant business move, but to be honest, it was sort of a selfish motive. I had been working on these other game products and stuff for Dragonlance, and with Dragonlance, we were trying to emulate the style of Wizards of the Coast in their 3rd edition line.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was great, but it was very informative and very dry.
Right.
Everything was written like as a reference book. And after a while, it just bored the crap out of me. I mean, I'm very proud of the work we did on that, and because I'm a Dragonlance fan, a lot of it was fun. But I've always wanted to write game books that were more conversational and more fun to read.
And this is
and I did.
That.
It's like I knew that I mean, my guess was as much as 50% of our audience wasn't going to be gamers. They're going to be all these brown coats. We're going to pick this book up, and if they were reading something that sounded like a technical manual, they would put it back down again.
Yeah.
But if it felt like Firefly to them from the very first page, they would stick around and see what this was all about.
Oh, heck yeah.
So, and it was like, and even though I live in Wisconsin, I'm actually from the South. So even though and it's not really Southern, it's more almost like Texas rancher.
Yeah.
But there's at least a similarity in the kind of speech, so it came very naturally to me. So it was not hard at all to kind of adopt that voice, and that also became the reason why every other product we've done, we've tried to do that same thing where we kind of write like we're in the world and that we're from it.
Yep.
Instead of stepping outside and saying, I even thought about originally doing something like some companies talk about it in terms of a TV show or a movie. This is your cast. This is your stars. Right. But I didn't even want to be that far removed. I said, let's throw all barriers away and pretend that we're immersed in the world that we're talking about.
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
And some really good success right out of the what do you call those things when a horse race and
right out of the
gate.
Shoot gate. There you go. That's why he gets paid the big bucks.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate. 2005 Origins, you got the Gamer's Choice Award for Best RPG, which I think is just a great honor and extremely, extremely well deserved. And from our listeners, because they've heard us talk before, that's the same year that Shadows over Camelot got the Gamer's Choice for Best Board Game. So you're pretty new still. The game itself.
Well, 3 years,
Yeah, the game, we actually, this was one of the other things that made Serenity a little bit different, because normally when a game company licenses a movie or television show, it's done after the fact. It's like, hey, that movie was really cool a year or two ago. We're going to do a game about it.
Right.
Our game came out 1 month before the film released.
I remember.
Right, I remember too.
So it was done. There was all this anticipation. So our game was the first thing that a Firefly fan could get a hold of while they're still slathering over the movie and waiting.
Well played, sir. Well played indeed.
it was catching lightning in a bottle. The timing could not have been better. And the only benchmark for me was looking at what had happened with another Joss Whedon RPG that was successful, and that was Buffy the Vampire Slayer from Eden Studios. And there's a whole other story I could tell you about that, but we're friends with those guys, George Vasilakos. In fact, his editor, Alex Jerkat, the editor, is actually doing a lot of work with us these days in Battlestar Galactica and Supernatural. But George had announced after 2 years that Buffy the Vampire Slayer had sold 15,000 copies, which in modern era, if you're not Wizards of the Coast or White Wolf, that is amazing.
Oh wow.
Well, with Serenity, we sold 15,000 copies in the first 10 weeks.
Wow.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice.
So we went through our first 2 printings like lightning fast, and we could not believe it. It is the most successful thing I have ever had anything to do with.
Awesome.
So there's still a bunch of brown coats out there. That's good to know.
Absolutely. And actually, you guys will be the first to hear. We are just about to go to the 6th printing of the Serenity role-playing game, which will put 30,000 books in print total.
Wow. Awesome. I was going to ask how the legs were because, Firefly still gets a lot of play. I mean, you can download on Xbox Live. It's out there in the stores still.
Yeah. The box set you can get still anywhere.
It's still very well promoted. And
the game, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, as a guy who's been doing this full time now for close to 8 years, there's a somewhat predictable sales cycle for these kind of things, but this just keeps on going. People keep discovering it. It's like it is not, while it's certainly slowed down from that initial craze.
Sure.
It's still we can really rely on those sales, and they have done. The game has just done so well for us, and now we're actually starting to release new stuff. We had 3 products for the last 3 years, and then now finally we've got another batch.
Now, there's been some confusion online about like the different projects that you were going to have come out, and some of them were supposed to be coming out for a while, and then they were delayed. And
yes, there are delays. They're very ugly.
Now, is the Serenity system, is that back on track? Because there were, I can't remember a lot of it, but there was going to be an equipment and spaceship reference book, I think.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm really happy to say a friend of mine who works in a game store in Chattanooga told me she just got her order in for Serenity Adventures.
Oh, nice.
Oh, good.
So
Actually,
that
I
is
just
actually
saw that,
out
actually.
in stores now.
Yep.
I'm very happy.
Excellent. Did you get your copy
And
yet,
that's,
Craig?
for
No,
those who
but I
haven't
will.
heard, that's an anthology. There are 5, short to medium length adventures that you can kind of plug into any existing game or use as a start of a new campaign.
Nice.
With lots of little, bits of material and characters and things you could, use and carry over into other adventures.
Great.
And so that's actually already out.
Yep.
And we're hopefully only a couple weeks away from going to press on 6 Shooters and Spaceships.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the one.
Which is that is the book of gear, vehicles, ships, robots, cybernetic arms, the whole deal.
Excellent. So this isn't some like old little fading away RPG. This is still selling strong. You guys are still expanding it, and the fan base is
absolutely
growing.
Great
It's awesome.
news. That's great
excellent
news.
So
Now-
we got that coming, and then we're trying to get that out in January. We've got a new book coming out called The Big Damn Heroes Handbook.
Nice.
See, I love the terms.
I know. It
It's
just brings it all back. And so this is going strong. So why not now skip over to a different topic?
Yeah, when's the best Gorham expansion coming out? That's what I want to. Sorry.
Oh, just you wait.
The next big title that you guys have, or to us anyway, the Battlestar Galactica game was pretty much the next game after Serenity, and is considered to have been tweaked. It tweaked the Cortex system a lot, I hear.
Yeah, well, that was the first and only, I guess it's the only major evolutionary step as far as the game system goes. It's like, if you're going to call Serenity Cortex 1.0, then Battlestar Galactica would be 1.5, and even the newer stuff after that, I would sort of say 1.6. Very minor, little things, but that was where we kind of rethought how we have traits, which are very similar perks and flaws in other games, or things that help define your character other than stats and skills. And in the old days, you had a trait; it was either major or minor, and then you had to look up the book and see what did that mean. I get a bonus of such and such because if I have a lure major, that means I get a +4 step to certain kinds of rolls.
Right.
Well, one of the things that occurred to me was that there was a certain level of memorization or constantly having to look that up, and I always wanted the game to be intuitive. So it suddenly, occurred to us that, maybe what would be better is to have those character traits be die types just like attributes and skills.
Oh, nice.
So that
Cool.
so that
So it sorta
basically if you
adds
have
bonuses?
a lure D4, you just throw a D4 into the dice you're already rolling, and you don't have to look it up.
Yep.
Oh,
So it was elegant, it was simple, and then on the flip side, if you're ugly, D4, then the
subtracts.
GM rolls a D4 and adds that to the difficulty.
nice. Yeah, that's I think my favorite thing about your system of these RPGs is how they're modern. They bring the RPG to the modern gaming era,
Absolutely.
and we talk about on our show all the time different board games and how modern board games and modern war games don't have a lot of table referencing going on. And I think it's a lot of fun. It keeps you in the game. You're not really worried about how do you look it up on the chart. And I think that's really nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on RPGs where you had to reference tables, and I actually loved Marvel Superheroes RPG from TSR back in the 80s. It was awesome, but that was every single thing you did. You had to look at a table.
Remember Traveler? Traveler was like every third thing you did. Consult 80.
I played an engineer in Traveler for years.
There you go.
But in Traveler was a huge, influence too. In fact, if you actually look at the dedication of the Serenity role-playing game, I actually dedicated it to my old Traveler gaming group.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah? Yep.
Well, Traveler is like the classic sci-fi RPG.
Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing, was when I saw Firefly, it reminded me of our old Traveler game, because we had a rust bucket spaceship, and we were always doing smuggling runs. And
Would that
getting
be
into
the
trouble.
Black Hawk?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah, those were the days.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the things
But as
we
far as what
remember.
you're saying with Cortex, the idea for me, and I loved those Sovereign Stone original game mechanics, but I always felt like they could do really well with a kind of storytelling kind of game. But there's a lot of storytelling type games, especially in the kind of indie RPG scene these days, where it's very kind of like, we don't need to roll dice or do any traditional game mechanics. You get very experimental, and it's like I think a lot of those are really interesting game design, but I don't know, none of them are games I really would want to play for a long period of time.
Right.
I still like to roll dice, and I still like there to be a lot of uncertainty.
Yep.
And so I wanted both, and that was what I was going for, was to try to figure out how you could do a storytelling kind of role playing game where you still are rolling dice all the time.
Now, are you a big Battlestar Galactica fan also?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Renee and I actually watched the miniseries when it first came on, and have been following it ever since. I'm actually Actually, I got to wait and catch up on some of those last few episodes before.
Okay, we won't tell you anything then.
Yeah, don't, because I actually fell behind and it got knocked off my DVR.
Oh,
so at some point I got to go on iTunes
now,
and
are you
download
telling me like you've managed to make it this long and no one spoiled the cliffhanger for you?
Yes, I have managed to.
Let's screw that up right now.
No,
Craig, guess what? Oh, sorry.
No, that's almost as impressive as writing the
That is
Serenity role-playing game.
That is impressive.
Well, it helps when you lock yourself in your office a lot and don't stop looking.
We have a board game recommendation for you, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
The Battlestar Galactica board game by Fantasy Flight is exceptional.
I am looking forward to that. I mean, I know some of the guys at Fantasy Flight. I have a buddy out there, Tony, and I almost got a copy at Gen Con, but I just decided to wait.
Oh, you should have got it.
Yeah, we had Corey on the show a couple weeks ago, the designer of the Battlestar Galactica game. That was a great conversation.
Yeah. And
I've heard.
Yeah,
I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Oh, it captures we played it at a big game night last weekend, and it almost came to blows.
But anyway, but I'm excited to see how. I'm so impressed with how Serenity captured the Firefly universe. It'll be interesting to see how your Battlestar Galactica book captures.
Well, that's been out for a while.
I haven't had a chance to get it.
Yeah, I know.
Battlestar Galactica now, and that's the thing too. If you saw how we wrote. Serenity was written almost like, we have this thing we call the voice of Serenity faux Mal.
Oh yeah,
right, faux Mal.
Because it's not specifically in character, but it's like somebody who's very much like him. His
right.
first cousin.
Your head is a fan. Mal's talking to you, right? In your
and so with Battlestar Galactica, we made the decision to make it sound a bit like Colonel Ty.
Nice.
Oh, there you go. I was wondering if you were going to go Ty or ball tie.
Military, hard ass, sarcastic kind of way of saying.
Yeah.
Check that out.
So it is a lot of fun, and it's kind of interesting because Firefly and Battlestar Galactica have some things in common. The focus in both were both on character and story.
Yep.
But at the same time, the tone and what they're talking about were very different, and the scale was so different.
Yeah, they have
That's
special.
we're going to ignore.
They have a special effects teams in common too. I believe there's a.
Yeah, the same guys do both.
Yeah, I believe.
Oh well, originally yes.
Yeah, originally
that
right.
was Zoic Studios, and when we first started working on the Serenity role-playing game, the guys at Zoic were unbelievably good to me.
Oh yeah.
Because sometimes when you have to go through channels for things, and it takes forever, and so I was able to call them up directly and say, "Is there any way you guys can help me get this image that I can't find anywhere else?" And they went out of their way to help out. And yeah, they did do the initial. They did the miniseries, and they did the first few 2 seasons of Battlestar Galactica. But then they actually NBC Universal had their own special effects in-house team that took over after that. So unfortunately, Zoic isn't doing that anymore.
That's too bad. Because I believe in the big Battle of Balix, there's a Battlestar Galactica somewhere in the background. That's what I've heard.
I didn't know that.
That's what I've heard.
Well, if you watch the miniseries of Battlestar Galactica, you'll see
Firefly.
Serenity flies over Laura Roslind's doctor's office at the beginning.
Nice. Now, in addition to these two, you've actually branched out to a few more places, right? We've got Demon Hunters.
Demon Hunters.
Yeah. Now, is that
Demon
a
Hunters,
TV show?
So yeah, if you, a lot of people don't know what Demon Hunters is, but a lot of people have seen the movie The Gamers.
Yep.
From Dead Gentleman Productions, and then now the sequel is out, The Gamers Darkness Rising, which another shameless plug to my friends. If you haven't seen it,
oh no, it's great.
Go put it on your Netflix queue. Go buy it from Amazon or wherever you can order it from, or Paizo.com.
Nice.
But it's really great. But a lot of people don't know that before they ever did The Gamers, Dead Gentlemen, when they were still in college, they did a movie called Demon Hunters, and then did a sequel called Demon Hunters Dead Camper Lake.
Dead Camper Lake.
Trying to describe Demon Hunters, it's sort of a cousin to things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Ghostbusters, or it's kind of its own thing. But it is a combination of kind of comic book action, comedy, and horror, all kind of bundled in together.
Nice. So another character-driven sort of storyline.
Yes, but definitely this was a chance to do something that was a lot less serious and a lot less realistic. It was, what if you're playing these larger-than-life characters, and can the game be pushed to do comedy?
Yeah.
And that was another one. And not only that, but we got to set a little bit of history there because Dead Gentleman Productions makes movies, we make games. So we figured, hey, what if we make a RPG that has a movie in it?
There you go.
So if you pick up a copy of the Demon Hunters role-playing game, you actually get a DVD bundled in the back that has a 30-minute film on it that will lead you into the world and to, tell you who these people are, what the hell is going on, and what the Brotherhood of the Celestial Torch is.
That's a cool crossover.
That's a great crossover.
And it is funny. I mean, you don't even have to play the game to enjoy the video, but I guarantee if you watch the video, you'll want to play the game. It came out way better than I expected.
Now, on the Cortex system, you got me curious about that. Is this going to be some kind of like open gaming sort of system that you can kind of like?
That's the final culmination.
Yeah, is it like a new GURPS kind of idea where it's just going to you can do whatever you want, but it's going to be in this nice sleek rule set?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. Our timing is really cool because today I actually, we actually did a pre-release of Cortex, the not quite finished version that we released at Gen Con.
Okay.
Still had a little bit of tweaking to do, some final editorial and proofreading and a little bit of revision, but there were lots of people who wanted it, and we didn't want to just say, hey, nobody can get anything, so we announced it as the pre-release. We've had it up for a little while on drivethrurpg.com and RPG Now, but today we're actually, I just sent it in to get the print run done, so that'll be out very soon.
Wow.
We're actually going to have that out in stores. It is the Cortex system role-playing game, and it is basically the GURPS version, of the game system we've got. It is presented as a generic rule set that you can use for whatever genre or story that suits your fancy. And you were talking about, you said open gaming. We're not doing it in the OGL. We are going to be releasing specific guidelines for how we will have a free and royalty-free license so that other people and publishers can use our rules to do adventures and expansions.
Nice. Privateer Press needs to give you a phone call. They have a problem and they answer now.
But yeah, I mean, really proud of that book. We literally have been playing with it, and you can do everything from the stuff you've already seen before. So you can do sci-fi, you can do modern horror, but you could also we actually did a kind of law and order, law enforcement, and courtroom drama kind of thing.
Nice.
That's
possibly the only way I would get my wife.
Courtroom scenes.
Wow.
See, that reminds me of the old comic in the corner of the original Dungeons and Dragons book where they had the bunch of wizards and knights playing around.
Yeah.
Saying, we're all playing lawyers and policemen. So that's pretty funny.
Wow.
It's come full circle now.
There you go. Now, is there anything in the Cortex, like the one thing that I couldn't quite wrap my mind around was how would you deal with magic? Is there some sort of...
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there's some sort of thing.
The short version is and what we do is... You could do magic so many different ways.
Yep.
We actually, if you actually look at the old Sovereign Sun stuff, that was one way you handled magic with this kind of game system. But we have a chapter we call window dressing, and literally it's how you do psionics, how you do cybernetics, it's how you do magic, and all those things, and they're more like a tool set. These are ideas, but you could either expand on them or you could ignore them and do your own thing. It's sort of like this is a toolkit on how you can tweak the game system and make it do what you want.
Wow.
So yeah, we do provide ideas on magic specifically, and we actually do have we have 3. We call them sample settings, but it's more like just entry level drugs.
Nice. At least he's honest. He doesn't pull any punches.
Gateway.
Right.
They're just a couple pages each. One is based on Michael Williams' fantasy series called Arcady, which is kind of this Southern Gothic fantasy inspired by the poetry of William Blake. It's not a typical, medieval fantasy. It's very different. And so we kind of introduce that and tell you how that would work. But if you really wanted to play in it right now, at least for the time being, you'd have to actually read the books and, do the rest of the work yourself. Same thing we took Margaret's sci-fi series, Star of the Guardians, and did the same treatment. We give you the basics of what the world is about, and that's kind of, it's kind of a cousin to Star Wars, but it's also the opposite of Star Wars in its own way. It's more like the evil democracy and the restoration of the benevolent monarchy.
Oh, nice.
And then finally, Cam Banks, he created we wanted to do a modern crime drama thing, so he created this thing called Trace, which actually gives a really great way to have a kind of teamwork, police, and law enforcement thing set in a modern time period. So it's kind of like a cross between Law and Order and The Shield.
Wow. Nice.
That's pretty. I was really, really proud of that because the other two were based on books. This was original.
Wow. Now that shows some pretty good flexibility in the property there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we give you a lot of, there's a lot of things, a lot of room for expansion on this. This is a 160-page book, and we obviously couldn't cover everything you could ever think of. But I think that as long as you're willing to play around with the game system and you've got a good imagination, you'd have to do a little bit extra work, but you could pretty much make this set of rules do whatever you want.
And that's good. That's for anybody of any genre, and it's I think the key to me here is character driven.
Yes.
That's what we're about, and the rules are meant to be flexible and open and encourage play that goes fast.
Yep.
You shouldn't get bogged down in minutia in this game.
It's
basic
great.
core mechanic. You should fall back on it, and go from there.
Yeah, smooth like butter.
Great. Yeah, we don't want to keep you too long.
No, I just want to ask one more. Like give us any kind of insight into what we're looking at down the road. We've got the 6 shooters and starships coming for Serenity. What do you see as the next step for the Cortex system in general? Are there anything
we are
planned?
working on another license thing right now that's actually going to be coming out in the next couple months.
Yeah.
And that would be the Supernatural role-playing game.
Another TV show.
Yes.
There's a TV show on, for people who haven't seen Supernatural. It's on Thursday nights on the CW network. It's in its 4th season, and actually has now been picked up for the rest of the year.
Nice.
And Supernatural is modern horror. It's basically a horror movie of the week and follows 2 brothers who are traveling around the country in a 1967 Chevy Impala hunting monsters and ghosts.
Well, you can't go wrong with that. Nope. That's a formula that never gets old.
There you go. That sounds fantastic.
And that's another one where my wife and I saw the very first episode. We became fans. And it was like, this is such a, it was such an obvious concept for a role-playing game. And in the way horror was handled, but with continuity, horror normally means almost everybody dies. This managed to do horror effectively, yet the characters get to usually live. But it also, like I said, had this badass car. It played a lot of classic rock.
There you go.
And it was just, it really, it was definitely kind of my generation. Even the way the guys speak on the show is really close to the way I talk in real life. And so being able to jump into that and write that has been a piece of cake. It's been excellent.
Sounds like Margaret has a lot to thank you and your TV viewing habits for.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Now, Margaret was a huge fan of Firefly, but she's not really a big fan of Battlestar Galactica and Supernatural. So those were both projects that it was
there you go.
She felt like, I knew the material and that she knew that other gamers liked it, so she said, let's do this if this is what people, would like to see.
It takes a visionary,
she was a
Jamie.
supporter without having to be a fan herself.
There you go.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much
for
being on the
This
show.
has been exciting. And
we do have some interesting news coming down the pipe. Some future projects and things that I can't tell you about yet. But when the time comes up, I'll shoot you guys an email and maybe we can.
Maybe have it back on. You can tell us all about it.
That'd be great. We'd love to have you on again, especially the next time you've got something really good you can actually talk about.
There's always something new.
Awesome.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Okay. This edition of Jever Notice is brought to you by the Woodland Doggers Wood Elf Blood Bowl team. We're sorry we killed your catcher, Ryan. The name doesn't make that much sense to me. It sounds wrong, but did you ever notice that sometimes Russ is a little cavalier with things like spelling and pronunciation? So if that was supposed to be the Woodland Dodgers, my apologies, and there you go. Both ways for the price of one. Do you ever notice how many different theories there are out there as to what a tournament is meant to gauge? Games Workshop's overriding theory has always been the total gamer. Privateer Press is interested only in the results on the tabletop, and as players take a hand, their own tournaments begin to reflect the varying balances between these two poles. One growing trend on the internet recently is to disparage the GW theory of the total gamer. Many people out there, and you know who you are, would rather see the winner of the tournament come strictly from the victories you achieve, and take nothing of the painting, composition, and sportsmanship into account. Others champion comp and painting, while thinking that sportsmanship is too subjective. And then there are the victory, comp, and sportsmanship folks who would like to see painting be its own category. I've been watching this battle from a distance, which has, honestly, been going on for years and years now, as it developed more recently with our friends from Podhammer, 40K Radio, and This Week in Wargaming. and other forums around the net. And I've kept silent as I gauged the current flow of emotions, and I think it's time I champion my own side. If you don't think painting should count, play AT-43. If you can find it now that Fantasy Flight has stopped distributing. If you don't think comp should count, go play chess, when both sides are exactly the same. And if you don't think sportsmanship should be a factor, spend a day watching a New York Yankees home game wearing a Boston Red Sox hat. Tabletop wargaming is a multifaceted hobby, and any true tournament should gauge all facets of that hobby. Modeling is a huge part of that equation. If you could bring soda cans for your Carnifexes or boxes of candy for your Warjacks, it wouldn't be quite the same, would it? If each item was clearly labeled, it still wouldn't be much fun to look at on the board. In any tournament where painting isn't a factor, Privateer Press, I'm looking at you, at least half the armies aren't going to be painted, and you lose an entire facet of the hobby. And a random drawing of all completed armies as a prize is not really enough to entice those hardcore tournament players to paint. Only when they lose points for not painting or lose ground against those armies that are painted towards final victory will those players paint. You don't like to paint? Suck it up. Or admit you're only good at half the game. The Dallas Cowboys currently don't like to play offense. Is it okay if we just let them earn points for defensive plays for a while? I mean, they're still good at that part, sort of, right? Part of your hobby is painting and assembling models with which to play. If you're playing in a tournament where that isn't reflected, well then, you're not quite as good at your hobby as you're trying to convince yourself you are you? Is it subjective? Yes. However, I've seen plenty of judging schemes that remove most of the subjective elements. It can be done. And although it's hard, and sometimes you're going to lose points when you don't think you should, well, that's life too, isn't it? Comp is a little more difficult to handle. Again, Privateer Press abdicates. All of their forces, well, most of their forces, are even in their own overpowered sort of way. So for the most part, this works out okay. But what if a person wants to take a particularly challenging force, handicapping themselves in some way? No reward is forthcoming, and you're just making it more difficult for yourself. You gain a moral victory if you can win with a softer list, but otherwise it's a lot like wetting yourself in a dark suit. You get a nice warm feeling, but no one else is going to notice. GW, of course, is more difficult. There are some people who will rant until the heavens fall against comp, despite the fact that we all know that some lists are more difficult than others. The key here is to think of comp not as a punishment to some, but as a reward to others. Can you take a Space Marine army with 4 or 5 Land Raiders? You sure can. But what about the guy who only takes 1? Or no vehicles at all? Or, God forbid, a Dark Angels list? Comp is there so that more well-balanced lists are compensated for. Again, part of this hobby is narrative. Right now, if you're staring at the speakers with eyes red with rage, calm down, whip out a calculator, and do some long-form math problems. Because that's what you might as well be doing if you want to take this element out of the hobby. It's social. It's a story you're building on the battlefield. There are alternatives if you want to face all the hardest units and grossest combos in all of gamerdom. There are GW events that fill that niche, and of course, all Privateer Press events. But again, I say to you, that is not testing your status in your hobby, just one facet of it. You want to claim the crown, your test should assess your strengths and weaknesses in all aspects of rulership, not just how well your fundament fits the seat. And now we come to sportsmanship. This one is by far the hardest to deal with. Who's to say who's a good sport or who's a bad sport? I've seen this gamed way too often. Hey, this is a crock. How about I give you max points and you give me max points? How many of us have heard this before? However, if there is no mechanism in place to check those win-at-all-cost asshats who get grumpy the second their poorly painted 5th Land Raider goes down from a lucky missile launcher shot, then the tournament will be weaker for it. At grand tournaments and even local tournaments, when you hit a real at least you know there is recourse. You smile and you nod as befits a good sport when you face a bad sport, and you slam them on the comp slip. At tournaments where this doesn't exist, like a certain War Machine Hordes tournament of my recent participation, you have nothing. Faced with the worst sport in the world, you can walk away, you can get in a fight, or you can smile and take it. knowing that this loser will move forward without penalty, having ruined your day and probably the day of several others as well. This lack of consequence speaks to a specific and thankfully small sampling of gamers. That behavior and sportsmanship doesn't matter, and thus they don't have to try. Again, most likely win-at-all-cost players who would at least put forth an effort, if for no other reason than that they want to win, are free to behave poorly because it just doesn't matter. Is it subjective? Unfortunately, yes. Minimize it if you must. As long as there's some threat hanging over these players' heads, they'll try at least in order to win. Now, does all this mean you have to count all of these things in every tournament? Not in the slightest. We here have had tournaments that focused on comp. When I ran one called the Novitiate Tourney, where you had to play a small brand new army for you that you developed just for the tournament. There have been painting competitions since the advent of our hobby, and there are tournaments galore that judge only your victories and defeats. But if you're trying to establish yourself as preeminent in the hobby, then don't come to me with that claim after having won in a tournament where you played with your power-gamed, matrix-listed, barely glued-together, unprimed models while stepping on every person you met along the way. That doesn't mean you're the best, my friend. It means you've earned less than a 25% in the hobby that you think you've mastered. And by anyone's grading rubric, that's a failure. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
James, the man they call James. He robbed from the rich and he gave to the poor. Stood up to the man and he gave him what for. Our love for him now ain't hard to explain. The hero of Canton, the man they call James. Our James saw the mutters' backs breaking. He saw the mutters lament. And he saw the magistrate taking every dollar and leaving 5 cents. So he said, "You can't do that to my people." He said, "Can't crush them
Jay?
under your heel."
Yeah, Mel.
James strapped on his hat.
You got any light you'd like to shed on this development?
Stole everything boss Diggins had.
No, Mel.
No, this must be what going mad feels like.
Hard to explain. The hero of Canton, the man they call James. Now here is what separates heroes from common folk like you and I. The man they call Jane, he turned around his plane and let that money hit the sky.
Oh, go around. That's where that cash went. I stole that money from Higgins like the song says. Lifted me one of his hovercraft. I got tagged by anti-aircraft. Started losing altitude. Had to dump them strong boxes. Stay airborne. Oh. 60,000. Untraceable. And I drop it right square in the middle of Mud Farmer Central.
We gotta go to the crappy town where I'm a hero.
And they call